Look around. Most men are lost. They waste their best years chasing things that don't matter. They let people walk all over them. They grow weaker, softer, more afraid, until one day they wake up and realize they've wasted their entire life. By then, it's too late. The truth? No one is coming to save you. No woman, no perfect opportunity, no magical sign. The world does not care about your excuses. It rewards strength, and it punishes weakness, brutally. Yet most men spend decades learning this the hard way. By the time they finally wake up, their best years are already gone. But you still have time. If you're tired of being the man who always wonders, what if, then keep watching. Because today, you're going to learn the harshest Stoic lessons that most men only understand when it's too late. Let's get started. Most men will die waiting. They will sit in their chairs, staring at their screens, waiting for life to finally begin. They will wait for the perfect time to start working on their dreams. Wait for the right woman to love them. Wait for the motivation to finally kick in. But it never comes. It never will. The years will pass, their hair will thin, their energy will drain, and the fire in their eyes will dim. They will realize, far too late, that the life they wanted was never coming for them. They were supposed to take it. This is the silent tragedy of most men. They think they have time. They believe they can start later. They assume that life has some grand moment where everything clicks into place and the universe gives them permission to begin. But life doesn't work like that. The man who waits for the perfect moment will spend his entire life waiting, while the man who acts, despite fear, despite doubt, despite imperfection, is the one who truly lives. Most men don't fail because of a lack of intelligence or talent. They fail because they delay, they hesitate. They allow the illusion of one day to rob them of the only time they will ever have, now. This is the first and most painful lesson, and if you don't learn it now, you will learn it when you're staring at a life you regret. The illusion of one day is a slow and silent killer. It whispers in your ear that you have time, that things will change, that life will work itself out. It feeds you just enough hope to keep you from acting, but not enough urgency to push you forward. It is the deadliest form of procrastination, because it doesn't feel like procrastination. It feels like planning, and planning feels responsible. Thinking about your future, dreaming about your ideal life, waiting for the right conditions. It all feels productive, but it isn't. It's paralysis disguised as preparation. The truth is that most men never start because they fear failing. They fear putting in effort and seeing no results. They fear looking foolish, wasting time, or discovering they are not as special as they thought. So they convince themselves that they just need more time, more experience, more money, more confidence. But all they are really doing is avoiding the pain of beginning. The man who waits for motivation will lose to the man who acts without it. The man who waits for the right opportunity will lose to the man who creates his own. The man who waits to feel ready will never begin at all. This is why Stoicism teaches urgency. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Not tomorrow. Now." The illusion of one day is not just about career or money. It infects every part of a man's life. Men delay having difficult conversations. They stay in bad relationships because they think it will get better one day. They stay in jobs that drain their soul because they believe they'll quit and follow their passion one day. They put off taking care of their bodies, convincing themselves they'll start eating right and exercising one day. Then years pass. They look in the mirror and barely recognize the man staring back. The fire in their chest is gone. They have spent so long waiting that they have forgotten how to live. One of the most devastating regrets a man can have is realizing that he let time slip away while he was busy making excuses. The best way to waste your life is to keep telling yourself you'll start tomorrow. Stoicism teaches that every moment spent waiting is a moment lost forever. Seneca warned, "While we are postponing, life speeds by. The clock does not stop because you feel unready. Time does not slow down because you are afraid. Life is indifferent to your hesitation." Most men convince themselves that they need more knowledge before they begin. They believe they must read every book, watch every video, prepare for every scenario. But this is not wisdom. This is fear in disguise. No book can teach you what experience will. No amount of thinking will replace action. You do not need more time to prepare. You need to start. Some men believe that they are making progress because they are researching their goals. They tell themselves that watching videos, reading articles, and taking notes is work. But this is just another trick of the mind. You are not learning, you are hiding. Real learning happens in the fire of action. You can read about swimming for years, but until you jump into the water, you will never know what it means to swim. You can study business strategies all day, but until you build something, you will never know how to succeed. The greatest teacher is doing. The fear of failure is the root of procrastination. Most men are not lazy. They are just terrified of what will happen if they actually try. They delay their dreams because as long as they don't start, they can still believe in the fantasy of success. But the moment they begin, reality sets in. The dream is no longer just an idea. It is a fight. And fights are messy. They hurt. They challenge you. Most men cannot handle that. They prefer the dream to the struggle. This is why the majority of people live in quiet disappointment. They could have been something, but they weren't willing to face the discomfort of effort. So they tell themselves stories about how they could have done it if only the timing was right, if only they had the right connections, if only they had started younger. But the truth is simpler. They lacked the courage to begin. The man who understands this changes his life overnight. He stops waiting and starts doing. He understands that time will pass regardless. He might as well use it. The difference between a man who succeeds and a man who doesn't is not intelligence, talent, or luck. It is that one man took action while the other waited for the right time. There is no right time. There is no perfect moment. There is only now. The only way to break free from the illusion of one day is to force yourself into action immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next year. Now, if you want to get in shape, do one push-up right now. If you want to start a business, make one phone call today. If you want to write a book, type one sentence before the day ends. Do something, anything, because the moment you take action, you shatter the illusion that you need to wait. You realize that movement is the cure for procrastination. The world belongs to men who take action while others wait. Most men will continue lying to themselves. They will watch this, nod their heads, and go right back to waiting. But you don't have to be most men. If you are tired of wasting time, if you are sick of delaying your potential, if you truly want to change, start now. Because if you don't, one day you will wake up and realize that one day has become never. Most men waste years waiting to start their lives, and when they finally wake up, they make another fatal mistake. They assume that being agreeable, easygoing, and endlessly patient will earn them respect. They believe that if they are kind enough, tolerant enough, and avoid conflict, people will appreciate them. But the world does not reward kindness without strength. It punishes weakness. No one respects a man who allows himself to be mistreated. The moment you tolerate disrespect, whether from friends, family, employers, or partners, you teach the world exactly how to treat you. When you don't set limits, people will take as much as they can. They won't even realize they're doing it because human nature gravitates toward power. If you don't show any, you become a target. Most men don't recognize this pattern until they've been used, discarded, or taken for granted for years. They wonder why people don't value them, why their opinions are ignored, why they are never the priority. They fail to see that they created this reality by never demanding respect in the first place. The world does not hand out respect freely. It must be earned through self-respect and firm boundaries. Stoicism teaches that a man's sense of self-worth should not be dependent on others, but it should also never be given away cheaply. A man who values himself sets standards for how he is treated. If someone disrespects him, he does not beg for decency. He removes himself from situations that degrade his dignity. If people do not appreciate his presence, he leaves without resentment or explanation. Weak men tolerate mistreatment because they fear conflict. They convince themselves that staying silent keeps the peace. But in reality, there is no peace in suppressing what you truly feel. There is only quiet suffering. Suppressed resentment does not disappear. It festers. It turns into frustration, bitterness, and self-loathing. It makes men feel powerless in their own lives, which is why they either explode in uncontrolled anger or shrink into depression. Setting boundaries is not about confrontation or aggression. It is about self-respect. It is about deciding what you will and will not allow in your life and enforcing it without compromise. People will push against your limits to see if they are real. The weak man gives in. The strong man holds firm. There is a simple rule in life. If you let people walk over you, they will. It is not personal. It is not malicious. It is just human nature. People subconsciously test each other's limits. If you do not push back, you are telling them that it is acceptable to take advantage of you. This happens in every area of life. In work, if you accept unfair treatment, you will never be valued. If you work late hours without demanding better pay, your employer will assume you are fine with it. If you allow your co-workers to shift their responsibilities onto you, they will continue to do so. If you do not stand up for yourself, you are signaling that you are expendable. In relationships, if you tolerate disrespect, it only gets worse. A woman will never admire a man who does not respect himself. If you accept dishonesty, manipulation, or inconsistency, you will be treated as an afterthought. People respect those who walk away when their standards are not met, not those who plead for better treatment. With friends, if you are always the one giving but they never reciprocate, you are not in a friendship. You are being used. If they only call when they need something but disappear when you need support, you're not part of their life. You're a convenience. The hard truth is that relationships should be mutually beneficial. If someone does not add value to your life, there is no reason to keep them close. Many men avoid setting boundaries because they fear losing people. They think if they push back, they will be seen as difficult, demanding, or arrogant. But losing people who disrespect you is not a loss. It is a necessary removal. If a person's respect is conditional on you being passive, it was never real respect to begin with. Stoicism teaches that external opinions should not dictate self-worth. If enforcing your boundaries makes someone angry, that is their problem, not yours. A person who truly values you will respect your limits. A person who only values what they can get from you will be offended. This is the easiest way to distinguish between who is genuine and who is selfish. The most powerful men in history were not loved by everyone, but they were respected. They did not tolerate mistreatment, not because they were aggressive, but because they valued themselves too much to allow it. They understood that a man without standards is a man without dignity. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire in the world, yet he wrote daily reminders to himself about maintaining his values. He understood that leadership is not about pleasing everyone. It is about standing firm in what you believe. He did not allow flattery to corrupt him, nor did he allow criticism to weaken him. He set the terms of his own respect. Seneca, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, advised men to carefully choose who they allow into their lives. He warned that associating with the wrong people leads to moral decay. If you spend time with those who lack discipline, you will become undisciplined. If you tolerate disrespect, you will slowly begin to doubt your own worth. The people around you shape your perception of yourself. If they do not treat you well, you will subconsciously start believing that you do not deserve better. Setting boundaries is not about controlling others. It is about controlling yourself. You cannot force people to respect you, but you can control what you tolerate. You cannot make others treat you well, but you can remove yourself from situations where you are treated poorly. Many men believe that being accommodating will make people appreciate them more. They think if they are agreeable and always say yes, people will reciprocate their kindness. But this rarely happens. More often, it breeds expectation and entitlement. The more you give without limits, the more people expect. And when you finally try to set a boundary, they react as if you have wronged them. This is why men must establish their standards early. If you allow disrespect once, it becomes a precedent. If you let small things slide, they turn into bigger things. Every time you accept mistreatment, you train others to see you as someone who will accept more. There is a common misconception that setting boundaries means being rude or harsh. This is false. You can enforce boundaries calmly and with strength. A simple, "I don't allow that," or "that doesn't work for me," is enough. You do not need to explain or justify your standards. Weak men over-explain. Strong men state their position and hold it. Men who fail to enforce boundaries often blame others for their lack of respect. They say their boss takes advantage of them, their friends do not appreciate them, their partner does not value them. But the real issue is that they never demanded respect in the first place. No one respects a man who does not respect himself. If you do not take yourself seriously, why should anyone else? If you allow disrespect, why would anyone stop? If you do not value your time, why would anyone else? Respect is not given. It is earned by the way you carry yourself, the way you respond to mistreatment, and the way you define your own worth. Some men learn this early. Others only realize it after years of frustration, after being used, ignored, and cast aside. The difference between the two is simple. One set his standards before the world tried to define them for him. The other let people decide his worth for him. There is no peace in passivity. There is no dignity in endless patience. There is no respect in being a man who allows himself to be treated as an option. The world will always test you. People will see how much they can get away with. If you do not make it clear where the line is, they will keep crossing it. If you want respect, start by respecting yourself. Speak with authority. Say no without guilt. Walk away from what does not serve you. The moment you do, everything will change. Because the truth is, people only treat you as well as you require them to. Respect is earned through strength, and strength is built through hardship. The moment a man stops demanding respect, he starts losing it. But there is something even more dangerous than being disrespected by others. It is disrespecting yourself by choosing comfort over challenge, by surrendering effort in favor of ease. The modern world has created a silent epidemic of weakness. Men no longer have to fight to survive. They do not have to push themselves. They do not have to endure. Everything is convenient, everything is accessible, and everything is designed to make life as easy as possible. But this ease comes at a cost. Comfort is a slow poison. It feels good in the moment, but it robs men of their potential. The more a man indulges in ease, the more he deteriorates, physically, mentally, and spiritually. He loses his drive. His discipline fades, his body weakens, his mind softens, and before he realizes what has happened, he has become irrelevant, a spectator in his own life rather than the one in control. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire in history, yet he trained himself to endure discomfort daily. He slept on the floor when he could have rested in the finest beds. He practiced self-denial when he could have indulged in unlimited luxury. He did this not because he had to, but because he knew a fundamental truth. Comfort breeds weakness, and hardship breeds strength. A man who seeks only comfort will never accomplish anything of significance. He will never push his limits. He will never see what he is truly capable of. He will waste his best years in a haze of distractions, conveniences, and easy pleasures. Hardship is not something to avoid. It is something to embrace. The greatest men in history were forged through struggle. The men who built empires, led revolutions, and changed the world were not shaped by luxury. They were shaped by adversity. They were hardened by resistance. They became something greater by enduring what most men would run from. Comfort is the greatest trap because it feels harmless. It is not an obvious enemy. It does not come with warning signs. It does not demand a decision. It creeps in slowly, lulling men into passivity. It makes them believe they are safe when, in reality, they are slowly being stripped of everything that makes them powerful. A man who does not challenge himself regularly will decay. His body will atrophy, his mind will dull, and his spirit will weaken. He may not even notice it happening. He will wake up one day and realize he has lost his edge. His ambitions will feel distant. His fire will be gone. And the worst part is, he will not even know when it started. Men today are drowning in comfort. They live in air-conditioned homes, eat processed food that requires no effort to prepare, and entertain themselves with screens that demand nothing from them. They avoid struggle at all costs, not realizing that struggle is the only thing that makes life meaningful. Strength does not come from desire. It comes from action. It comes from suffering. It comes from making yourself do what is difficult, what is painful, what is uncomfortable. It is built in the gym when your muscles are burning, in the cold shower when your body screams for warmth, in the rejection when you refuse to let failure stop you. The body is designed to adapt. If you give it resistance, it grows stronger. If you remove all difficulty, it becomes weak. A man who refuses to challenge himself will rot in his own inactivity. He will become a shell of what he could have been. Most men today lack discipline, not because they are incapable, but because they have been conditioned to avoid discomfort. They look for shortcuts. They chase quick results. They want rewards without effort. They expect progress without sacrifice. But nothing of value comes without struggle. Seneca warned against the dangers of luxury. He saw that ease corrupts men faster than hardship. A man who is used to difficulty can handle anything. A man who has only known comfort will collapse at the first sign of adversity. This is why hardship is a blessing. It prepares you for the inevitable challenges of life. Most men do not fail because they are unlucky. They fail because they are unprepared. They have spent years avoiding difficulty, so when life finally demands strength from them, they have none to give. They are broken by things that should have made them stronger. Discomfort is not an enemy. It is a teacher. It shows you what you are capable of. It reveals your weaknesses and gives you the opportunity to correct them. Every challenge, every setback, every struggle is a chance to grow. A man who embraces discomfort is a man who cannot be broken. He does not fear difficulty because he has trained himself to endure it. He does not seek ease because he knows that ease is the enemy of greatness. The modern world has given men the option to be weak. It has made it possible to survive without effort, to be entertained without learning, to consume without creating. But just because weakness is an option does not mean it should be chosen. The men who rise above mediocrity are the ones who choose struggle. They do not wait for hardship to find them. They seek it out. They wake up early when they could sleep in. They train when they could rest. They work when they could relax. They push themselves beyond their limits, knowing that on the other side of discomfort is the man they are meant to be. The greatest danger is not failure. It is comfort. It is settling for a life that is easy instead of a life that is fulfilling. It is waking up one day and realizing that you never truly lived because you spent your best years avoiding the very things that would have made you great. There is no pride in ease. There is no honor in laziness. There is no respect for the man who coasts through life without ever testing himself. The men who are remembered, the men who leave a mark on this world, are the ones who embraced the pain of growth and rejected the temptation of comfort. A man who fears discomfort is a man who will never know his own potential. He will never experience the satisfaction of overcoming something that once seemed impossible. He will never understand what it means to earn his success. The path of comfort leads nowhere. It ends in mediocrity, regret, and a wasted life. The path of hardship leads to strength, resilience, and self-respect. Every day, a choice is made. One path leads to softness, the other to power. One leads to decline, the other to greatness. The difference between the two is simple: the willingness to suffer for something greater. Those who choose comfort will fade into nothing. Those who choose struggle will rise above the rest. Most men will take the easy road. Will you? A man who chases comfort becomes weak. A man who seeks validation becomes lost. Nowhere is this more evident than in the way most men approach relationships. They do not see reality. They see an illusion, an image crafted in their minds of the perfect woman who will complete them, save them, and bring meaning to their lives. This belief is not just naive, it is dangerous. It blinds men to reality, causes poor decisions, and leads them into relationships where they sacrifice their dignity in pursuit of a fantasy that never existed. From an early age, men are conditioned to believe that their ultimate fulfillment lies in finding the one. Movies, books, and culture reinforce the idea that somewhere out there is a woman who will make everything right. She will love him unconditionally, appreciate him for who he is, and fill the void he feels inside. This belief causes men to waste years chasing an ideal that does not exist. It makes them dependent on relationships for their happiness, leading to desperation, poor choices, and repeated heartbreak. Stoicism teaches that a man's happiness must come from within. Any man who places his emotional well-being in the hands of another person is setting himself up for suffering. When a man believes he needs a woman to feel whole, he enters relationships from a position of weakness. He gives up his independence. He tolerates disrespect. He makes excuses for mistreatment because he fears losing what he thinks he cannot live without. In reality, he is not in love with the woman. He is in love with the illusion she represents. This is why so many men stay in toxic relationships. They do not see them for what they are. They hold on to the hope that things will return to the way they were in the beginning. But relationships built on fantasy, not reality, always collapse under the weight of truth. A man who understands this does not place his self-worth in the hands of another. He does not need validation to feel complete. He does not chase. He does not beg. He does not tolerate mistreatment in the hope that love will fix everything. Most men confuse attraction with destiny. They meet a woman who excites them, and they believe it is fate. They do not pause to think rationally. They ignore red flags. They become blind to anything that does not fit their idea of what they want her to be. This is why so many men end up with the wrong person. They do not choose. They surrender. They let emotions dictate their actions, and in doing so, they give away control over their own lives. A man who believes in the right woman often makes himself too available, too eager, too willing to please. He thinks that by proving his devotion, he will be rewarded with love. But human nature does not work this way. People do not respect those who sacrifice their own dignity for approval. A man who places a woman on a pedestal will never be seen as an equal. He will be seen as weak, and weakness invites mistreatment. Relationships should add to your life, not consume it. A strong man enters a relationship from a position of abundance. He does not seek completion. He is already complete. He does not tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or inconsistency. He's willing to walk away if his values are not met. And because he has this strength, he does not suffer in relationships. He does not cling to something that does not serve him. He does not fear being alone, because he knows that being alone is better than being with the wrong person. Most men suffer in relationships because they have never truly built themselves first. They expect a woman to give them purpose, confidence, and happiness. But no one can give you what you do not first create for yourself. A man who has not built his own life will always enter relationships from a position of neediness. And neediness leads to emotional dependence, which leads to control, jealousy, and fear of loss. This is why so many men experience heartbreak. It is not the loss of a woman that destroys them. It is the realization that they never had a strong foundation of their own. Stoicism teaches that everything external is temporary. This includes relationships. It does not mean you should not love, or that relationships do not matter. It means that you must never build your sense of self on something that can be taken away. If your happiness depends on the presence of another person, you have surrendered control over your own life. This is a dangerous way to live. The strongest men are the ones who understand that love is not about possession, but about alignment. They do not pursue relationships from a place of desperation, but from a place of fulfillment. They do not seek someone to fix them, because they do not need fixing. They do not fear losing someone, because they know that what is right for them will stay, and what is wrong for them will leave. A man who places all his energy into finding the right woman neglects the most important relationship in his life, the one he has with himself. He thinks that once he has a partner, everything else will fall into place. But if he has no direction, no discipline, no purpose, then a relationship will only magnify those flaws. He will either become overdependent or he will become resentful when he realizes that love does not cure internal emptiness. This is why Stoicism teaches self-mastery first, relationships second. A relationship built on fantasy will always collapse under reality. A relationship built on two strong, independent individuals will last. A woman does not want a man who needs her. She wants a man who chooses her while still being fully himself. If a man is afraid to walk away, he is not respected. If he tolerates behavior he would not tolerate from anyone else, he is seen as weak. If he gives more than he receives out of fear, he will be taken for granted. Most men do not fail in relationships because they lack love. They fail because they lack boundaries, purpose, and emotional control. They believe that passion and attraction are enough, but those things are temporary. The foundation of a strong relationship is respect, alignment, and shared values. If those are not present, no amount of love will make it work. A man who understands this does not waste time in relationships that are not right. He does not cling to something broken. He does not lower his standards out of fear of loneliness. He understands that being alone is better than being with someone who does not truly see, respect, or appreciate him. And because of this mindset, he is never desperate, never needy, and never emotionally controlled by another person. The most painful relationships are the ones where a man refuses to accept reality. He stays with someone who drains him, disrespects him, or does not align with his values. He tells himself that love means endurance, that true commitment means staying no matter what. But commitment to the wrong person is not loyalty. It is self-destruction. Stoicism teaches detachment from what does not serve you. This does not mean avoiding love. It does not mean refusing to care. It means recognizing when something is no longer right and having the strength to let go. It means never making decisions from a place of fear. It means choosing people who genuinely bring value to your life, not just those who fill a temporary emotional need. The greatest tragedy is not losing a relationship. It is losing yourself in one. The strongest men know that relationships should complement, not define. They do not tolerate disrespect. They do not settle for anything less than true partnership. And they never, under any circumstance, believe that their happiness is in the hands of another person. The men who suffer the most are the ones who chase a dream instead of a reality. They expect love to save them. They think a relationship will give them the confidence, security, and meaning they lack. But relationships do not make men strong. Strong men make relationships strong. A man who lives for a woman will always lose her respect. A man who lives for himself and invites the right person into his life will experience the only kind of love worth having, one built on mutual choice, not dependency. Most men will learn this lesson too late. They will give everything to the wrong person, hoping to receive what they should have created within themselves. They will endure mistreatment, hoping it gets better. They will lose themselves, thinking it is the price of love. The men who understand this truth before it is too late will never chase an illusion again. They will build themselves first. They will hold their standards, and they will never settle for less than what aligns with their deepest values. A man who lives at the mercy of his emotions is a man who has surrendered control over his own life. He is not in charge. His impulses are. His reactions dictate his fate. His anger pushes people away. His insecurity poisons his relationships, and his fear paralyzes him. He sabotages himself, yet blames the world. He burns bridges, then wonders why he is alone. He destroys opportunities, then calls himself unlucky. His emotions rule him, and because of this, he's weak. No man can escape emotion. It is part of being human. But what separates a strong man from a weak one is his ability to master it. Most men never learn this. They believe that their feelings are truth, that their immediate reactions are justified, that their emotions should be expressed without control. But history does not remember the men who were slaves to their impulses. It remembers the ones who stood firm when others broke down, who remained rational when others lashed out, who chose discipline over reaction. Stoicism teaches that the man who cannot control himself will be controlled by everything around him. He will be easy to manipulate. A slight insult will throw him into a rage. A moment of rejection will make him feel worthless. A small failure will convince him to quit. He will be led by frustration, disappointment, and resentment. And because he cannot master his emotions, others will master him. Anger destroys more than it protects. Many men believe that their rage makes them strong, that aggression earns respect. But uncontrolled anger does not command respect. It commands fear. People do not admire a man who cannot keep himself together. They tolerate him, avoid him, or despise him. A man who lashes out is not seen as powerful. He is seen as weak, unstable, and incapable of control. He ruins relationships, repels opportunities, and makes himself a target. The greatest leaders in history were not the ones who reacted emotionally. They were the ones who stayed calm under pressure, who remained composed in chaos, who did not let their feelings dictate their decisions. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his greatest strength was his restraint. He had the power to crush his enemies, yet he understood that true power lay in self-mastery, not destruction. A man who cannot control his emotions in a relationship will always lose. His insecurity will make him jealous. His desperation will make him needy. His inability to handle conflict with maturity will turn every disagreement into a war. He will blame his partner for his own instability, pushing her away while convincing himself that she is the problem. A woman does not respect a man who cannot handle his emotions. She may pity him, she may try to support him, but she will never admire him. And once admiration is gone, the relationship is doomed. A man who lacks emotional control in his career will sabotage himself. He will take criticism personally. He will argue over small disagreements. He will let frustration prevent him from improving. He will struggle to work with others because he's too focused on how he feels rather than what needs to be done. He will burn bridges out of pride, react impulsively instead of strategically, and make decisions based on temporary emotions rather than long-term success. Resilience is built in the moments when a man chooses discipline over reaction, when he is insulted but does not lash out, when he is rejected but does not break down, when he is frustrated but does not complain. Every time he resists the urge to let his emotions control him, he strengthens his mind. He develops the ability to act despite his feelings. And this is what makes him powerful. He is no longer ruled by circumstance. Emotional control does not mean suppression. It does not mean pretending to feel nothing. It means acknowledging emotions without being controlled by them. It means recognizing that anger, sadness, and frustration are temporary and allowing them to pass without making reckless decisions. It means responding to life with intention, not impulse. Most men react, but few respond. Reaction is instinctive, uncontrolled, and thoughtless. Response is deliberate, measured, and rational. The man who reacts will always regret his words, his actions, and his choices. The man who responds will always maintain control, no matter what happens around him. The reason most men fail at emotional mastery is because they never train it. They train their bodies, their skills, their careers, but they never train their minds. They do not practice restraint. They do not practice patience. They do not expose themselves to difficulty and learn how to stay calm. And so, when life inevitably tests them, they fail. They explode in anger, drown in self-pity, or collapse under pressure. A man who trains emotional control becomes untouchable. Insults do not affect him. Criticism does not shake him. Failure does not define him. He is not cold. He is composed. He does not react blindly. He chooses how to respond. And because of this, he is respected, trusted, and valued. People know they cannot manipulate him. They cannot provoke him into reckless action. They cannot shake his confidence. They cannot control his decisions by playing with his emotions. He has become independent of external influence, and that is one of the greatest strengths a man can have. The world is full of men who are controlled by their emotions. They make decisions based on temporary feelings, then spend years paying for their mistakes. They react without thinking, then wonder why they face so many problems. They let anger burn their bridges, insecurity ruin their relationships, and fear keep them trapped in mediocrity. A man who is driven by emotion is a man who cannot be trusted. He cannot trust himself because he never knows how he will react. He cannot be trusted by others because no one wants to rely on someone unstable. His life is dictated by feelings, which means he is never truly in control. He is a prisoner to his own impulses. True freedom is emotional independence. A man who controls his emotions controls his life. He is never at the mercy of circumstances, people, or his own weaknesses. He does not waste energy on petty conflicts. He does not seek revenge over minor slights. He does not beg for attention, validation, or approval. He is unshaken by insults, unbothered by rejection, and unfazed by temporary setbacks. A man who has mastered his emotions is respected everywhere he goes. He does not have to prove himself through aggression, loudness, or bravado. His presence alone commands authority. He is not a slave to anger, nor does he let insecurity dictate his actions. He thinks before he speaks, acts before he reacts, and chooses before he surrenders to impulse. Stoicism is not about denying emotion. It is about using it as fuel rather than letting it burn you from the inside. Anger can be redirected into discipline. Sadness can be used for growth. Fear can be converted into action. But this can only happen when a man owns his emotions instead of letting them own him. A man who lacks emotional control will look back at his life and see nothing but burned opportunities, lost relationships, and unnecessary suffering. He will realize that his greatest enemy was never the world. It was himself. His own inability to master his emotions caused more damage than anything external ever did. The strongest men are not the ones who feel nothing. They are the ones who feel everything, but choose their response. They do not allow emotions to make decisions for them. They do not let temporary frustration lead to permanent mistakes. They train their minds as much as their bodies, knowing that the greatest battles are always fought internally. Most men will continue to be slaves to their emotions. They will react impulsively, blame others, and let their feelings dictate their future. But the man who understands this lesson, who takes responsibility for his own mind, will become unshakable, untouchable, and unstoppable. And that is the man the world remembers. A man who cannot control his emotions is already defeated. But there is a deeper weakness that destroys men even before they realize it: the need for validation. It is invisible, yet it controls nearly every decision. It makes men bend their principles, shrink themselves for approval, and live as shadows of what they could be. The greatest chains are the ones a man willingly wears, and the need for external validation is one of the heaviest. A man who constantly seeks approval is not free. He is owned by the expectations of others. He filters his words to avoid offense. He changes his actions to fit in, and he measures his worth by how much attention, praise, or acceptance he receives. He does not make choices for himself. He makes choices based on what will get the best reaction. He lives for applause, but in doing so, he loses himself. Stoicism teaches that a man's value must come from within. If his confidence is based on how others see him, he will always be unstable. Praise will inflate him, but criticism will shatter him. He will spend his life chasing approval, yet he will never feel fulfilled. A man who needs validation does not own his own mind. He has outsourced it to the world. Most men never break free from this trap. They shape their lives around what they believe will make others like them. They chase careers they do not love because society says they should. They buy things they do not need because they want to impress people who do not care. They tolerate disrespect because they fear rejection. They silence themselves when they should speak, and they conform when they should stand apart. In doing so, they sacrifice their authenticity. A man who seeks validation will always be controlled. He may not realize it, but every decision he makes is filtered through the question, what will people think? This is not freedom. This is mental servitude. The strongest men in history were not the ones who followed the crowd. They were the ones who stood alone when necessary. They did not seek permission to be themselves, nor did they wait for approval before taking action. The need for validation is rooted in fear. The fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, the fear of not being enough. But a man who allows fear to guide his choices will always be weak. He will never take risks, he will never speak his mind, and he will never live fully because he is too concerned with how he appears to others. He is not building a life, he is performing one. Approval is fleeting. One day, people praise you. The next, they criticize you. If a man builds his self-worth on external validation, he will always be chasing something he cannot control. This is why Stoicism teaches detachment from opinion. It does not mean being indifferent to the world. It means refusing to let the world dictate your value. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." A man who understands this stops living for others and starts living for himself. Social validation is an addiction. The more a man relies on it, the more he needs it. He begins to shape his identity around how others react to him. If they praise him, he feels worthy. If they ignore him, he questions himself. He loses the ability to stand alone. He becomes desperate for attention, approval, and acceptance. But the more he seeks it, the less he receives. The world respects men who do not beg for validation. It ignores those who do. A man who is free from the need for approval becomes dangerous. He does not hesitate to say what he thinks. He does not change himself to fit in. He does not care whether people agree with him, and because of this, he commands respect. He does not ask for it, he embodies it. People admire those who do not need their approval because it signals confidence, self-assurance, and independence. The greatest leaders, thinkers, and warriors in history did not seek validation. They were not concerned with being liked. They were concerned with being right. Socrates questioned everything, even when it made him unpopular. Seneca lived by principles, even when they made him enemies. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but remained indifferent to praise and criticism alike. They understood that a man's worth is not determined by public opinion, but by his own mind. A man who depends on validation will always be limited. He will never take the hard road if it means facing criticism. He will never express an unpopular truth if it means people will dislike him. He will never be fully himself because he is constantly adjusting to what he thinks others want. He is not a man. He is a reflection of external expectations. Stoicism teaches that a man must cultivate inner conviction. His confidence should not rise and fall with public opinion. He should know who he is, what he stands for, and why he does what he does. If others approve, fine. If they do not, it does not matter. He must be his own judge, his own guide, and his own source of worth. Anything else is slavery. Most men do not realize how much their need for validation controls them. They shape their personalities based on what is socially acceptable. They hide their real thoughts because they fear judgment. They follow trends, opinions, and movements, not because they believe in them, but because they do not want to stand alone. But the man who stands alone is the only man who is truly free. Freedom is the ability to be yourself without compromise, to do what is right, not what is popular, to say what you think, not what is expected, to live according to your own values, not the shifting opinions of the crowd. This is the only way to true self-respect. The need for validation weakens a man in every area of life. In relationships, he becomes needy, constantly looking for reassurance. In business, he avoids risks because he fears criticism. In social situations, he plays a role instead of being authentic. He's always adapting, always adjusting, always seeking approval. And because of this, he is never at peace. A man who lives for validation will spend his entire life chasing it, never realizing that no amount of external approval will ever be enough. He will always need more praise, more recognition, more acceptance. But the man who kills his need for validation becomes unstoppable. He no longer hesitates. He no longer doubts himself. He moves through life with certainty because he does not need anyone to tell him his worth. He has already decided it for himself. Most men will remain prisoners of public opinion. They will shape their lives around what others think. They will waste years seeking validation, bending, adjusting, and filtering themselves for approval that never truly satisfies. But the man who chooses himself over the opinions of others will experience a freedom most will never know. No man can fully control the world around him, but every man can control how much power he gives to other people's opinions. Those who seek approval will always be slaves to it. Those who reject it will always be free. A man who breaks free from the need for validation finally understands a painful truth. Most people in his life are not permanent. Friendships, no matter how deep they seem, are often temporary. This is a reality most men refuse to accept until it is too late. They invest blindly, assume loyalty, and believe that the bonds they have today will remain unbreakable. But time proves otherwise. People change. Priorities shift. What once felt like an unshakable brotherhood fades into nothing more than distant memories. Some friendships dissolve quietly, others end abruptly, and many men are left wondering what happened, why they are no longer a priority, why those who once swore loyalty now seem indifferent. The truth is, most friendships are conditional. They exist because of shared circumstances, common interests, or mutual benefit. When those factors disappear, so do the friendships. Stoicism teaches detachment, not from people, but from expectations. Expecting lifelong friendships sets a man up for disappointment. Believing that loyalty is permanent blinds him to reality. A strong man values friendships, but he doesn't depend on them. He enjoys them while they last, but doesn't base his sense of security on their continuation. He understands that no matter how close a friend is today, there is no guarantee they will still be there in a decade. Most men fail to recognize this because they confuse history with loyalty. They assume that because someone has been in their life for years, they will always be there. But loyalty is not measured in time, it is measured in action. Many men have long friendships that are meaningless, relationships that exist only out of habit, not mutual respect. There are people they call friends who would not stand by them in hardship. They mistake longevity for depth. A man who understands this reality does not cling to friendships that have outlived their purpose. He does not hold on to relationships that drain him, nor does he feel obligated to maintain connections that no longer align with his values. He accepts that some people are only meant to be in his life for a season, and when that season ends, he lets go without bitterness. Most friendships are built on convenience. They form because of shared environments, school, work, hobbies, or similar life stages. But when circumstances change, those bonds often fade. A man who expects all his friendships to withstand the test of time fails to see that most people are not meant to stay forever. They are meant to play a role in one part of his life and then move on. This is why friendships should be valued in the moment, not taken for granted. When a man understands their temporary nature, he appreciates them more while they exist. He does not assume they will last forever, so he doesn't waste time on meaningless interactions. He invests in the friendships that add value, but he doesn't resist when people drift away. Clinging to friendships that no longer serve him weakens a man. Many hold on to people out of nostalgia or obligation, even when those relationships bring nothing but negativity. They tolerate disrespect, accept one-sided loyalty, and ignore the reality that some friendships should end. Not every bond is meant to last, and forcing it only leads to resentment. Stoicism teaches that self-reliance is the foundation of strength. A man who depends on friendships for his emotional stability is vulnerable. If his sense of worth is tied to his social circle, he will struggle when those connections fade. He will chase after people who have already moved on. He will feel betrayed by the natural course of life, rather than accepting it as part of the human experience. A man who does not depend on friendships is a man who cannot be shaken by their loss. He appreciates people without attaching his identity to them. He values relationships, but he does not let them define him. He can stand alone without feeling abandoned. He can move forward without needing permission from others, and because of this, he is never desperate for companionship. His friendships are a choice, not a necessity. The harsh truth is that most friendships are transactional. People stay in your life because there is something they gain, whether it is support, entertainment, status, or opportunity. This is not a bad thing. It is simply reality. The problem arises when a man does not recognize when the transaction is over. He continues giving long after the other person has stopped. He keeps investing in a relationship that is already dead, and in doing so, he weakens himself. A strong man knows when to walk away. If a friendship no longer adds value to his life, he does not cling to it out of guilt or sentimentality. He does not force connection where there is none. He does not beg for time, attention, or loyalty. He accepts that some people will leave, and he lets them. Most men learn this lesson too late. They waste time chasing people who have already moved on. They feel betrayed when friends grow distant. They hold on to old relationships out of fear of loneliness. But loneliness is not the absence of friends. It is the absence of self-sufficiency. A man who has a strong sense of self never fears being alone because he is not dependent on external validation. There is a difference between appreciating friendships and needing them. A man who appreciates his friendships enjoys them while they last, but does not fear their end. A man who needs friendships becomes weak. His happiness is controlled by others. His self-worth is tied to his social circle, and his decisions are influenced by the fear of losing connections. The strongest friendships are built on mutual growth, not obligation. A real friend does not stay in your life out of habit. They stay because the bond still serves a purpose. They challenge you, push you, and bring value to your journey. Anything less is not a friendship. It is simply familiarity. Many men surround themselves with people who hold them back. They maintain friendships with those who do not share their ambition, discipline, or values. They stay connected to those who do not inspire them to be better. They remain in circles where mediocrity is accepted, where growth is discouraged, where comfort is prioritized over progress. And because of this, they never evolve. A man who prioritizes his own growth naturally outgrows many of his friendships. This is not something to fear, it is something to embrace. Not everyone is meant to follow the same path. If a man is committed to becoming his best self, he will naturally separate from those who are content with staying the same. And that is not a loss. It is an inevitable result of progress. Friendships should be chosen carefully, maintained intentionally, and released when necessary. A man should never feel guilty for outgrowing those who do not grow with him. He should never hold on to friendships that bring him down. He should never compromise his values for the sake of belonging. And he should never fear standing alone, because a man who stands alone stands stronger than a man who relies on weak foundations. Most friendships are temporary, and that is not a bad thing. It is simply the way life works. The problem is not that friendships end. The problem is failing to accept when they should. When a man understands this, he stops resisting change. He stops mourning what was lost and starts appreciating what remains. And most importantly, he never lets the presence or absence of others define his own worth. A weak man clings to friendships because he fears being alone. A strong man values friendships but remains independent, and that independence makes him someone who never needs anyone, but is always respected by those who recognize his worth. Most men will spend their lives expecting friendships to last forever, only to be disappointed when they don't. But the few who understand the truth accept that every relationship has a purpose, and not all of them are meant to last a lifetime. And those men, they are the ones who remain unshaken, no matter who stays or who leaves. A man who relies too much on friendships for his sense of security will eventually face a harsh truth. People leave, circumstances change, and loyalty is never guaranteed. The moment he ties his identity to external forces, he is setting himself up for disappointment. And yet, this is only one of the many ways in which life humbles those who are unprepared. A man who believes he is in control of everything will eventually be reminded that he is not. Strength does not come from arrogance. It comes from preparing for what cannot be avoided. Every man will face a moment where life breaks him, not if, but when. Those who believe they are immune to hardship are the ones who suffer the most when it arrives. The man who never anticipates failure is the man who collapses under it. This is why Stoicism does not teach avoidance of hardship. It teaches preparation for it. The man who expects suffering is never surprised by it. He is not destroyed by loss, betrayal, or failure because he has already trained himself to endure. Life does not care about how powerful a man feels in his best moments. It does not care about his confidence when everything is going well. It does not care how much he has achieved or how respected he is. At some point it will strip everything away. It will test his limits. It will show him how little control he truly has over external events. A man who is arrogant in his strength will be crushed by his own illusion of invincibility. A man who's wise enough to prepare for his own downfall will survive it. Many men walk through life assuming their position is permanent. They believe success is their right, that stability will last forever, that their health, status, or relationships will remain untouched. They make the fatal mistake of thinking that they have finally made it, and then life happens. A sudden financial collapse, a betrayal from someone they trusted, a loss they never saw coming. The strongest men are not the ones who avoid these moments. They are the ones who expect them. Humility is not weakness. It is understanding that life does not owe anything to anyone. The man who prepares for hardship is the man who builds himself to withstand it. This is why Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort. They trained themselves to go without luxury, to endure physical hardship, to live simply even when abundance was available. They did not do this because they enjoyed suffering. They did it because they knew that suffering was inevitable. A man who has already faced difficulty by choice is unshaken when difficulty arrives by force. A man who believes he is too powerful to fall is already halfway to his downfall. Arrogance blinds him. It makes him overconfident. It makes him take risks without preparation. It makes him neglect discipline because he assumes he no longer needs it. And then, when the fall comes, he has no foundation to catch himself. The man who expects to fall, who trains himself for loss, who prepares his mind for struggle, he may stumble, but he will never break. Loss is a guarantee in life. It is not something to fear, but something to understand. A man who avoids thinking about it is the man who will be shattered when it comes. Stoicism does not teach pessimism. It does not say to live in fear of misfortune. It teaches awareness, to recognize that everything you have today can be gone tomorrow, and to live in a way where you are ready for that reality. Many men assume that wealth, love, and success are permanent once they have them. They believe they will always be respected, that their relationships will always be strong, that their position in life is secure. But everything is temporary. Fortune shifts, love fades, status is lost. The question is not whether a man will experience loss, but whether he will be prepared when it happens. A weak man believes that hardship is unfair. He sees suffering as something that happens to others, not something that is a natural part of life. When difficulty arrives, he panics. He feels like a victim. He blames the world, the economy, other people, anything but himself. A strong man understands that suffering is inevitable, and the only thing he controls is how he responds to it. Stoicism teaches premeditatio malorum, the practice of contemplating worst-case scenarios. This is not meant to create fear. It is meant to remove fear. A man who has already envisioned loss is not afraid when it comes. He has rehearsed it in his mind. He has accepted it as part of life. He does not waste energy on shock, denial, or despair. He focuses on what he can do next. Those who prepare for hardship are not pessimists, they are realists. They understand that no man, no matter how powerful, is beyond suffering. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire of his time. Yet he constantly reminded himself of his mortality, of the impermanence of wealth, of the certainty of struggle. He did not see himself as above misfortune. He saw himself as prepared for it. Most men learn this lesson too late. They spend their best years indulging in comfort, assuming that life will always be kind. They take success for granted. They assume loyalty is guaranteed. They think their strength is permanent. And when the fall comes, they have no idea how to handle it. They break because they never built the resilience to withstand it. A man who prepares for hardship is never caught off guard. He does not assume that anything he has is his forever. He does not take his position for granted. He remains humble, disciplined, and aware that everything can change at any moment. This mindset does not make him fearful. It makes him invincible. He may suffer loss, but he will never lose himself. Most men will spend their lives believing that they are immune to failure until they are forced to face it. But the man who prepares for the fall before it comes is the man who will always rise again. He does not resist reality. He does not complain about misfortune. He accepts life as it is, not as he wishes it to be. And because of that, he is never truly defeated. A man who prepares for hardship does not seek comfort in illusions. He does not waste time trying to protect himself from the inevitable. He understands that security is not real. It is something people create in their minds to feel safe. But safety is never guaranteed. The belief that life can be controlled is what makes men weak. They build their entire existence around stability, only to realize too late that everything they relied on can disappear in an instant. Most men chase security as if it is something they can earn and hold on to. They believe that if they work hard enough, save enough money, or find the right partner, they will finally be safe. They assume that stability is a reward for doing everything correctly. But life does not work that way. Jobs disappear. Markets crash. People change. The only certainty in life is that nothing stays the same. A man who expects security will always be disappointed. He will build his life around guarantees that do not exist. He will choose safety over growth, comfort over challenge, and predictability over risk. He will avoid anything that threatens his sense of control, and because of this, he will live in constant fear. A man who does not embrace uncertainty is a man who is always waiting for disaster to strike. Stoicism does not teach a man to hope for security. It teaches him to embrace the unpredictable nature of life. The world is chaotic. Things happen without warning. A strong man does not resist this. He adapts to it. He does not depend on stability because he knows it is temporary. He does not panic when things change because he expects it. He is not caught off guard by loss because he never assumed anything was permanent in the first place. Most men go through life thinking that if they just reach a certain level of success, they will be safe. If they earn enough money, they will never struggle. If they find the right woman, they will never be alone. If they build a stable career, they will never have to worry about the future. But this mindset is built on fragile foundations. It assumes that stability is something that can be earned, rather than something that can be taken away at any moment. A man who relies on external stability is weak. He is dependent on circumstances beyond his control. When things go well, he feels powerful. When things fall apart, he feels helpless. His confidence is not real. It is an illusion that disappears the moment his security is threatened. A man who builds his sense of strength on things that can be lost has no real strength at all. The world respects those who are unshaken by uncertainty. A man who is not afraid of losing what he has cannot be manipulated. He cannot be controlled by fear. He does not make decisions based on security. He makes decisions based on what is right, what is necessary, and what aligns with his principles. This is why Stoicism teaches detachment from external outcomes. It is not about being careless. It is about refusing to let temporary circumstances dictate one's inner stability. A man who understands this truth does not hesitate to take risks. He does not need a guarantee of success before he acts. He does not waste years waiting for the perfect conditions to pursue what he wants. He moves forward, knowing that uncertainty is part of life. Most men wait. They postpone their goals, their ambitions, and their dreams because they want certainty. They want proof that they will not fail. But in waiting for security, they waste their most valuable resource, time. Fear of uncertainty keeps men trapped in mediocrity. They choose safe jobs they do not enjoy. They stay in relationships that no longer serve them. They hold on to routines that drain them, all because they fear the unknown, more than they fear a life of quiet misery. They convince themselves that predictability is better than possibility, even if it means never living fully. A man who is not afraid of losing everything is a man who is truly free. He does not cling to wealth because he knows it can disappear. He does not build his life around another person because he knows people change. He does not depend on a job to define him because he knows careers are temporary. He is prepared to walk away from anything that no longer serves him, and because of this, he is never trapped. Many men believe that living without security means living recklessly, but the opposite is true. The man who accepts uncertainty is the man who makes the smartest decisions. He is not blinded by comfort. He doesn't make choices out of fear. He doesn't waste time building a false sense of control. He focuses on what he can control: his mind, his actions, and his resilience. Stoicism teaches that the only real security is inner strength. No external factor can provide true stability. The world is unpredictable. A man who places his peace in things outside himself will always be at risk of losing it. But a man who has trained himself to handle uncertainty, who has prepared his mind for chaos and instability, can face any challenge without breaking. Most men will never understand this. They will spend their lives chasing stability, only to realize too late that it does not exist. They will live cautiously, avoiding risk, avoiding discomfort, avoiding anything that threatens their illusion of control. And because of this, they will never experience true freedom. A man who embraces uncertainty is a man who commands his own fate. He does not ask for guarantees. He does not hesitate because of fear. He does not cling to things that are meant to pass. He moves forward, knowing that nothing is promised, nothing is safe, and nothing is owed to him. And because he accepts this, he is never caught off guard. He is never afraid to rebuild. He is never afraid to lose. He is never afraid to let go. Most men will realize too late that security was never real. But the few who understand this truth early will move through life with a confidence that no loss, no setback, and no uncertainty can ever shake. They will not wait for the perfect moment. They will not cling to what is already gone. They will face the unknown head-on, because they know that in the end, the only true security is the strength to handle whatever comes next. A man who understands that security is an illusion stops wasting time trying to control the uncontrollable. He does not postpone his life for a future that may never come, nor does he waste energy clinging to things that are already slipping away. But there is one illusion even more dangerous than the pursuit of security: the belief that time is endless. Most men live as if they will never grow old. They assume there will always be more time to chase their ambitions. more time to fix their mistakes, more time to build the life they want. They believe that later is an option, that they can neglect their health, waste their youth, and indulge in distractions without consequence. Then one day, they wake up and realize the truth. Time was their greatest wealth, and they have spent it poorly. A man can lose money and earn it back. He can rebuild his reputation, recover from failure, and start over. But he can never reclaim wasted time. Each day that passes is one that he will never get back. Yet most men act as if they have an unlimited supply. They trade their youth for meaningless pleasures, they waste their strongest years on trivial pursuits, and they assume they can always start taking life seriously later. Stoicism teaches that every moment wasted is a moment stolen from your future self. A man who fails to value time when he is young will regret it when he is old. He will look back and see the years he lost chasing status, chasing validation, chasing everything except what truly mattered. He will wish he had spent less time seeking approval, less time in meaningless relationships, less time indulging in distractions. But regret does not give time back. The world convinces men that youth is meant to be wasted, that their strongest years should be spent in pursuit of pleasure, in indulgence, in recklessness, that they have all the time in the world to get serious later. But later never comes. A man who does not learn discipline when he is young will not suddenly develop it when he is old. A man who wastes his youth expecting wisdom to come later will wake up one day with neither youth nor wisdom. Aging is not the enemy. Time is not the enemy. The enemy is a man's own failure to recognize how little time he truly has. He believes he will always have another decade to get in shape, another year to start his business, another chance to repair broken relationships. He delays action because he assumes he will always have more time. But nothing is more dangerous than this assumption. Every year, a man loses something he will never get back. He loses opportunities. He loses energy. He loses moments that he could have used to build something meaningful. And yet, most men do not feel the urgency until it is too late. They only start to take life seriously when they begin to see their youth fading, when they notice their bodies slowing down, when they start to regret the years they wasted. A man who wastes time does not notice the damage right away. Time does not punish immediately, it punishes gradually. A few years of neglect do not seem like much. A decade of wasted time feels like nothing at first. But then it catches up. The body weakens, the mind slows. The opportunities that once seemed abundant begin to disappear. The same pleasures that once felt exciting now feel empty. The things that once seemed important now seem meaningless. And, the worst part, there is no way to get those years back. Stoicism teaches that the only way to avoid this regret is to live with awareness now. A man must see time for what it is, a resource more valuable than money, status, or possessions. He must protect it ruthlessly, spend it wisely, and never assume that he will have more of it than he actually does. Most men will spend their strongest years chasing external validation instead of internal growth. They will waste time proving themselves to people who do not care. They will pour their energy into relationships that do not serve them. They will invest in things that do not last, while neglecting the things that do. They will think they are living, when in reality, they are simply killing time. A man who understands the value of time stops wasting it immediately. He does not chase temporary pleasures that leave him with nothing in return. He does not sacrifice his long-term future for short-term indulgence. He does not waste his best years on people, habits, and distractions that do not add value to his life. Time is not just about youth. It is about what a man does with the time he has left. A man who has wasted time does not have to keep wasting it. He can start valuing it right now. He can stop delaying the things he knows he needs to do. He can take responsibility for how he spends each moment. He can stop assuming that tomorrow is guaranteed. Most men will not learn this lesson until it is too late. They will only begin to appreciate time once they feel it slipping away. They will only start taking life seriously once they no longer have the energy to change it. But the few who understand this truth early will live in a way that most men never do. A man who values time stops living passively. He does not let years pass without purpose. He does not let distractions steal his potential. He does not wait for some future version of himself to take life seriously. He does it now. And because of this, he will never look back with regret. Most men will spend their lives assuming they will always have more time, but the few who understand the truth will treat every moment as if it were their last, and that is what separates those who truly live from those who simply exist. A man who values time understands that his greatest asset is not wealth, status, or approval from others. It is his own strength. Time alone does not build a powerful man. What he does with that time does. The world does not respect those who waste their potential. It does not reward passivity, hesitation, or softness. It respects power, the kind that comes from self-mastery, discipline, and the ability to command influence without begging for it. Most men believe they will be respected for being nice, agreeable, or helpful. They assume that kindness is enough to earn admiration, that fairness guarantees loyalty, and that doing the right thing will naturally bring recognition. But life does not work that way. People respect strength, not good intentions. They follow those who demonstrate control, capability, and an unshakable presence, not those who seek approval. A man who lacks power is ignored. He is overlooked, dismissed, and taken advantage of. The world does not ask if he has a good heart or if he means well. It only asks one question: does he command respect? If the answer is no, he is treated as insignificant. Stoicism teaches that power does not come from aggression or domination. It comes from self-control, competence, and unbreakable willpower. A man who cannot control himself, his emotions, his impulses, his mind, is weak, no matter how kind or intelligent he may be. Strength is not about forcing others to listen. It is about being so undeniable that they have no choice but to pay attention. Most men never develop this kind of power. They believe influence is something they can buy, something that is given to them, or something that comes with time. They wait for people to respect them instead of demanding it through their actions. They waste years trying to be liked when they should be building the kind of presence that cannot be ignored. A man who commands respect does not seek it. He does not beg for attention. He does not change himself to fit in. He focuses entirely on becoming stronger, mentally, physically, and intellectually. He develops skills that make him valuable. He trains his mind to remain calm under pressure. He cultivates a level of self-sufficiency that makes others look to him for guidance. Weakness is the fastest way to be dismissed. A man who cannot stand his ground will be walked over. If he is easily offended, easily intimidated, or easily manipulated, he will never be taken seriously. People may be polite to him, but they will not respect him. They will not listen when he speaks. They will not look to him for leadership. A man who does not project strength will always be overlooked. Power is not just about external success. It is about internal mastery. A man who cannot control his emotions will never control his destiny. if he reacts impulsively, if he allows others to dictate his state of mind. If he crumbles under pressure, he has already lost. Strength comes from being unshaken. It comes from the ability to remain composed, no matter what happens. It comes from proving, through action, not words, that nothing can break him. Most men believe power is about being dominant, but true power is about being immovable. It is about standing firm in one's principles, refusing to be manipulated, and never allowing external circumstances to dictate internal peace. A man who has mastered himself does not need to prove his strength. His presence alone is enough. A weak man is at the mercy of the world. He is controlled by emotions, dictated by others, and afraid to assert himself. He tries to avoid conflict at all costs, thinking that if he is agreeable enough, he will be accepted. But people do not respect those who bend too easily. They respect those who hold their ground without fear. A man who seeks approval is never powerful. He will always be at the mercy of what others think. He will hesitate, second-guess himself, and water down his beliefs to avoid confrontation. But a man who prioritizes strength over validation is free. He does not need permission to speak, act, or lead. He does not ask if people agree. He simply does what needs to be done. Power is not given. It is earned through discipline, experience, and resilience. A man who lacks power will always be at the bottom, subject to the will of those who are stronger. He will resent those who have what he does not, but he will never take the necessary steps to become someone others respect. Stoicism teaches that a man should never chase power for its own sake. Power should be a byproduct of mastery. The goal is not to control others. It is to control oneself so completely that the world cannot help but take notice. The more a man develops himself, the less he needs to demand respect, because it will be given to him naturally. A man without power will be mistreated. People will use him, take advantage of him, and overlook him. They will sense weakness, and they will exploit it. But a man who exudes quiet strength, who does not need to yell, beg, or force himself into conversations, commands attention without effort. Strength is a choice. Weakness is a choice. Every day, a man either builds power through discipline or loses it through avoidance. Most men will never grasp this. They will wonder why they are overlooked, why their kindness is not enough, why they are ignored while stronger men take the lead. But those who understand the truth will stop waiting for respect and start earning it. Power is not something men are born with. It is something they create within themselves. And once they do, they never have to ask for respect again, because the world will give it to them automatically. A man who understands power knows that the world does not operate on kindness, fairness, or goodwill. It operates on strength. But many men refuse to accept this. They go through life believing that if they do the right thing, if they play by the rules, if they are honest and hard-working, the world will reward them. They assume that fairness is real, that justice is guaranteed, and that doing good ensures good will return. And then life happens. They watch liars succeed. They see weak men favored. They suffer betrayal from people they trusted. They are denied opportunities they deserve. And the only response they have is shock, outrage, and bitterness. Most men are weak because they expect fairness. They believe that life is some kind of moral balance sheet where effort leads to reward, suffering guarantees growth, and injustice is always corrected. They spend years feeling frustrated when the world does not match their expectations. They waste energy complaining about what is unfair instead of adapting to what is real. But reality does not care about fairness. It does not care about what should happen, it only delivers what is. Stoicism teaches that fairness is a human construct. It is an idea, not a law of the universe. The natural world is not fair. Some men are born into wealth, others start with nothing. Some get opportunities by chance, while others fight for scraps. Hard work does not always pay off. Integrity does not always lead to success, and justice is not always served. A man who expects fairness will always be disappointed. A man who accepts reality as it is and moves accordingly will always be ahead. Most men waste time arguing with reality. They focus on what should be, what could be, and what would be fair. They get angry when life does not operate according to their personal sense of justice. They refuse to play the game because they think the rules are flawed. And while they sit on the sidelines complaining, others are adapting, adjusting, and winning despite the unfairness. A man who refuses to let go of the idea of fairness makes himself weak. He becomes a victim. He expects life to correct itself, to eventually give him what he feels he deserves. He assumes that being right is enough. The truth alone will prevail. But life does not reward those who are right. It rewards those who are effective. Stoicism teaches that a man must prepare for injustice, not be broken by it. He must assume that things will go against him, that people will deceive him, that systems will fail him. This does not mean he should be cynical. It means he should be strategic. He does not waste time waiting for fairness to arrive. He does not expect life to level the playing field. He takes action despite the imbalance. Most men think that unfairness is an excuse to quit. They believe that because the odds are stacked against them, they do not have to try. They blame society, the system, other people, anything except themselves. But the truth is, the most successful men in history did not waste time fighting against the unfairness of the world. They worked around it. They used it to their advantage. They understood that weakness is expecting fairness, but power is understanding how to operate in an unfair world. A man who accepts reality doesn't get emotional when things go wrong. He doesn't waste time being outraged. He doesn't see obstacles as personal attacks. He sees the game for what it is and plays it better than others. If he is denied an opportunity, he finds another way. If he is mistreated, he does not complain. He adapts. If people deceive him, he does not fall into self-pity. He becomes more strategic. Most men spend years waiting for fairness that will never come. They expect good things to happen because they believe they are owed something. They tell themselves that one day everything will balance out. But there is no balance. There's no system keeping track of good and bad. There's only cause and effect, action and consequence. The man who takes control of his actions instead of waiting for the world to adjust to his expectations is the man who wins. Stoicism teaches that a man must never depend on fairness. He must depend only on his own ability to navigate the world as it is. He does not waste energy being resentful. He does not let himself be distracted by how things should be. He focuses entirely on how things are and moves accordingly. Most men think that letting go of fairness means giving up on morality. They assume that if they stop expecting the world to be just, they must abandon their own sense of ethics. But this is not about abandoning principles. It is about understanding that principles alone do not ensure success. A man can still be honest, disciplined, and honorable, but he must never expect those qualities alone to guarantee results. He must combine morality with power, strategy, and adaptability. A weak man believes that life will eventually reward him for suffering. He thinks that if he endures enough hardship, the universe will correct itself. He tells himself that if he waits long enough, justice will be served. But waiting is not a strategy. Suffering is not currency. Pain is not a debt that life will pay back with success. A strong man does not use hardship as an excuse to stop moving forward. He does not tell himself that he deserves better. He works toward better. He does not sit in self-pity, waiting for recognition. He creates his own opportunities. He does not let the unfairness of the world make him bitter. He lets it make him unstoppable. Most men will go through life bitter about what they did not receive. They will focus on what was taken from them, what was denied, and what should have been. They will die full of resentment, having spent their lives arguing with reality instead of acting within it. But the few who understand this truth will move through life unshaken. They will never beg for fairness. They will never expect life to reward them. They will never wait for justice. They will make their own way because they never needed fairness to begin with. A man who frees himself from the illusion of fairness begins to see the world as it truly is. He stops expecting life to reward him for his efforts. He stops believing that hard work, loyalty, or suffering will guarantee a return. He accepts that reality operates on its own terms, not on his personal sense of justice. But there is one area where most men still refuse to accept the truth: relationships. Men grow up believing in an idea of love that does not exist. They think that the way they love is the way they will be loved in return. They assume that devotion, sacrifice, and commitment will be repaid in kind. They project their own understanding of love onto women, expecting the same intensity, the same permanence, the same selflessness. And when they do not receive it, they are shattered. They become bitter, resentful, confused. They do not understand why love fades, why loyalty is conditional, why emotions shift. They expect stability in a realm where only fluidity exists. Stoicism teaches that the greatest source of suffering is refusing to accept reality. And the reality is this: women do not love men the way men love women. Their love is not unconditional. It is not permanent. It's not based on blind devotion. Women do not choose partners out of obligation, nor do they stay out of principle. They love based on what they feel in the moment, and when that feeling changes, so does their love. Most men do not understand this until they experience heartbreak. They think they are different. They believe that their relationship is stronger, that their woman is not like the others, that the love they share is unbreakable. They ignore the warnings, the patterns, the signs that history repeats itself. They tell themselves that as long as they are good, as long as they are loyal, as long as they provide, their woman will remain by their side. And then, one day, she doesn't. A man who does not understand the nature of women will always be at their mercy. He will always be confused by their actions. He will be blindsided when love fades. He will never understand why his loyalty was not enough, why his sacrifices were not appreciated, why his devotion did not ensure commitment. He will expect certainty in a world where nothing is certain. Women love based on what they feel, not what they owe. They do not love based on logic, obligation, or long-term planning. They are driven by emotion, and emotion is unstable. What excites them today may bore them tomorrow. What they cherish now may become ordinary later. They are drawn to strength, presence, and value in the moment, not to past actions or sentimental attachments. A man who expects a woman to love him the way he loves her will always be disappointed. His love is structured, hers is fluid. His love is built on commitment, hers is built on experience. He loves based on what she is to him. She loves based on what he makes her feel. He expects love to be a contract. She experiences love as a condition. Stoicism teaches that acceptance is power. A man who accepts the truth about love is never devastated by it. He does not base his sense of worth on whether a woman stays or leaves. He does not chase after a lost connection. He does not beg for love, nor does he crumble when it fades. He enjoys relationships for what they are, not for what he wishes they would be. Most men go through life making the same mistake over and over again. They place women at the center of their world. They believe that love is the foundation of their purpose. They define themselves by their relationships. They chase validation through romance, thinking that if they find the right woman, everything else will fall into place. They pour their energy into building connections, expecting those connections to be as permanent as their effort. But they fail to understand one fundamental rule. Women do not commit to men. They commit to the version of the man that excites them. A man who remains stagnant will always lose. The moment he stops growing, the moment he becomes predictable, the moment he becomes too familiar, too available, too safe, he is no longer a source of excitement. And once that happens, love fades. Not because he did something wrong, not because he was not enough, but because stagnation is the death of attraction. Men assume that once they have secured a woman's love, their work is done. They believe that loyalty alone will sustain the relationship. But women do not stay for loyalty. They stay for presence, energy, dominance, and challenge. They do not love men for what they were yesterday. They love them for who they are right now. A man who expects certainty in relationships will always be blindsided. Love is not logical. It does not follow a set of rules. It does not operate on fairness. It does not care about effort. It does not reward kindness. It does not favor those who try the hardest. It is nature, not negotiation. Stoicism teaches that a man must never depend on love for stability. He must become his own foundation. He must be so strong, so centered, so self-sufficient that love is an addition, not a necessity. A man who does not need love is the only man truly capable of experiencing it without suffering. He enjoys it without attachment. He participates in it without dependence. He does not resist its changes, nor does he fear its loss. Most men learn this lesson too late. They spend years trying to make love work on their terms. They argue with reality. They tell themselves that if they do everything right, love will last forever. But love is not something that can be controlled. It is not something that can be owned. It is not something that is owed. A man who accepts this truth is unbreakable. He is not manipulated by emotion. He does not fear loss. He does not waste energy trying to make love conform to his expectations. He embraces it for what it is and lets go when it is time. He remains in control, not of love itself, but of his response to it. Most men will never understand why love does not operate the way they expect. They will waste years trying to force stability onto something that is inherently unstable, but the few who see through the illusion will never be controlled by it again. They will move through life without fear of loss, without bitterness, and without dependence, because they no longer expect love to be anything other than what it is. And that is the only way to experience it without suffering. A man who understands the true nature of love frees himself from its illusions. He does not base his sense of worth on a woman's affection, nor does he expect permanence in something inherently unstable. But even after learning this, most men still fall into a deeper trap. They do not live for themselves. Their entire existence is shaped by what others expect of them. They make choices based on obligation, tradition, and approval, never realizing that their life is not truly their own. From the moment a boy is born, he is taught to be useful to others before being true to himself. His value is measured by how well he provides, how much he sacrifices, how effectively he fulfills roles assigned to him by society. He's told to be a good son, a responsible worker, a loyal partner, a dependable father. But nowhere is he told to be his own man first. And so, he spends his life serving everyone but himself, believing that if he meets expectations, he will eventually find happiness. Most men only realize too late that self-ownership is the only true freedom. They spend decades trying to please their parents, their partners, their bosses, their social circles. They mold themselves to fit into what is expected of them. They suppress their desires, deny their ambitions, and silence their true thoughts to maintain peace. They chase approval because they have been taught that a man's worth is determined by how well he serves others. And when they finally wake up, they see that they have built a life that does not belong to them. Stoicism teaches that a man's first duty is to himself. He cannot be truly free if his decisions are dictated by external forces. If he is living to satisfy others, he does not own his time, his energy, or his identity. He becomes a puppet, controlled by the expectations of family, relationships, employers, and society. He exists, but he does not belong to himself. A man who does not own himself lives in quiet misery. He may have a respectable career, a stable relationship, and the approval of those around him, but he will feel a deep dissatisfaction that he cannot explain. He will have done everything right, yet something will be missing. That missing piece is his own will, his own direction, his own voice, the part of him that was sacrificed to fulfill obligations that were never truly his. Most men fear breaking away from these expectations. They worry about being seen as selfish, rebellious, or ungrateful. They stay in jobs they hate, in relationships that drain them, in obligations that suffocate them, all because they believe they have no choice. They convince themselves that duty must come before personal truth. But a man who does not live for himself is not truly living. A man who practices ruthless self-ownership does not ask permission to be who he is. He does not wait for validation. He does not shape his life around what others believe is best for him. He takes full control, knowing that the only person who must approve of his choices is himself. He does not neglect responsibilities, but he refuses to let them define him. He builds his life on his own terms. Most men confuse self-ownership with selfishness. They assume that living for themselves means abandoning relationships, neglecting responsibilities, or dismissing the needs of others. But self-ownership is not about isolation, it's about autonomy. A man who owns himself does not cut himself off from the world. He simply refuses to be controlled by it. He gives by choice, not by obligation. He commits because he wants to, not because he feels trapped. A weak man believes that his duty is to serve others before himself. A strong man understands that he can only give value to the world if he has first built his own foundation. A man who lacks self-ownership is easily manipulated. He's swayed by guilt, pressured by expectations, and led by the opinions of those around him. He's constantly seeking approval from parents, from partners, from bosses, from peers, and in doing so, he loses himself completely. Stoicism teaches that the only approval a man should seek is his own. He must decide his own path, even if it disappoints others. He must reject expectations that do not align with his truth. He must be willing to walk away from anything that demands he betray himself. This is not cruelty, it is survival. A man who lives only to satisfy others will one day resent them. He will look back and realize that he spent his life trying to make everyone happy except himself. Most men realize too late that they never truly lived for themselves. They wake up in their 40s, 50s, or 60s and ask, "Whose life have I been living?" They reflect on years of making decisions based on duty instead of desire. They feel the weight of regret, knowing that they never prioritized their own fulfillment, and by then, much of their time is gone. A man who practices self-ownership does not wait for old age to wake up. He takes control now. He stops seeking approval. He stops explaining himself. He stops making choices out of fear. He recognizes that his life is his responsibility, and that no one, not his family, not his partner, not his society, has the right to dictate his path. Most men will never take this step. They will continue living as extensions of others. They will marry because they are expected to. They will choose careers that are safe rather than meaningful. They will prioritize security over passion. They will compromise everything in the hope that they will be rewarded for their obedience. But the truth is, no reward is coming. The only reward is the life they build for themselves when they finally take full ownership. Stoicism teaches that freedom is not given, it is taken. A man does not gain self-ownership by waiting for permission. He gains it by choosing himself every day, by rejecting control, by refusing to let guilt or fear dictate his decisions. He understands that no one is coming to save him. If he wants a life that is truly his, he must create it himself. Most men will never experience this kind of freedom. They will go to their graves still trying to meet expectations, still trying to be good men, according to someone else's definition. But the few who understand this truth will break free from the chains that hold them back. They will stop living for others and start living for themselves. And in doing so, they will experience a power that most men never even realize exists. A man who reclaims ownership of his life no longer allows others to dictate his path. He stops living under obligation, stops seeking permission, and stops shaping himself to fit expectations that do not align with his truth. But there is one final test that separates those who truly take control from those who only think they have: the ability to endure pain in the pursuit of something greater. Most men fail this test. They want freedom, but they do not want to suffer for it. They want strength, but they do not want to earn it. They want success, but they do not want the discipline that makes it possible. So they choose comfort instead. They tell themselves they will start later. They settle for what is easy instead of what is meaningful. And then, one day, they wake up drowning in regret. The weight of regret is unbearable. It is heavier than failure, heavier than rejection, heavier than pain. It follows a man everywhere, reminding him of the things he could have done but didn't. It is the voice in his head that whispers, "You had time, but you wasted it." It is the feeling of looking in the mirror and knowing that he is not the man he could have been. No suffering is worse than this. Stoicism teaches that pain is inevitable, but a man can choose which kind of pain he will carry. He can either suffer now through discipline or suffer later through regret. One is temporary, the other is permanent. One strengthens him, the other weakens him. One leads to growth, the other leads to a slow decay. But most men do not make this choice consciously. They drift through life avoiding discomfort, thinking they are making things easier for themselves, until they realize they have made things worse. A man who chooses discipline over regret gains everything. He may endure hardship, but he becomes stronger. He may face challenges, but he becomes wiser. He may struggle, but he moves forward while others remain stuck. He's willing to sacrifice temporary pleasure for long-term fulfillment. He does not live for the moment. He lives for what is lasting. Most men believe that discipline is suffering. They see it as punishment, as a restriction on their freedom. They do not realize that discipline is the very thing that creates freedom. A man who lacks discipline is controlled by impulses, by addictions, by circumstances. A man who masters discipline controls everything: his mind, his body, his future. Regret is what happens when a man chooses what is easy instead of what is right. It doesn't come suddenly, it builds over time. A few missed opportunities, a few postponed goals, a few moments of weakness, and suddenly years are gone. And when a man reaches that point, there is nothing he can do to get those years back. No amount of wishing, no amount of self-pity, no amount of anger will rewind time. He will be left with nothing but the knowledge that he was his own greatest obstacle. A disciplined man never faces this. He does not wait for motivation. He does not waste time negotiating with himself. He does not need external validation to take action. He moves forward because he has already decided to. He does not fear discomfort. He welcomes it. He does not run from difficulty. He embraces it. He does not see pain as an enemy. He sees it as a tool. Most men spend their lives avoiding short-term suffering, only to lock themselves into long-term misery. They avoid the discomfort of working out, so they suffer the consequences of a weak body. They avoid the discipline of saving money, so they suffer the stress of financial instability. They avoid the pain of rejection, so they suffer the regret of never having tried. Every time a man avoids hardship, he makes his future worse. Stoicism teaches that a man must train himself to endure pain willingly. He must stop running from it. He must stop choosing the path of least resistance. He must stop acting as if he has unlimited time to get serious. Time is running out. The longer he waits to commit to discipline, the heavier the weight of regret will become. A man who lives without discipline does not feel the consequences immediately. His weakness is slow, gradual, almost unnoticeable. He tells himself that skipping one day of work, 1 week of effort, 1 month of consistency is harmless. But then the habit forms. Then the laziness becomes normal. Then the years disappear. And by the time he realizes his mistake, it is too late. A man who lives with discipline does not think about what is easy. He thinks about what is necessary. He does not make excuses. He does not complain about how hard things are. He does not wait for the perfect time to start. He understands that every day he hesitates, he is losing, and so he acts. He does not allow his mind to trick him into comfort. He does not allow weakness to gain a foothold. He keeps moving forward because he knows that discipline is the only thing that will protect him from regret. Most men will never escape the trap of avoidance. They will go through life delaying, postponing, and excusing themselves. They will tell themselves that they will change when the time is right. They will convince themselves that one day they will find the motivation to be disciplined. But one day never comes, and when they realize this, it will be too late to fix the damage. A man who understands this truth never waits. He does not negotiate with himself. He does not need someone to push him. He does not look for reasons to take the easy way out. He knows that every moment of hesitation steals from his future. And because of this, he does what needs to be done, no matter how difficult it is. Regret is the punishment for wasted time. It is the consequence of avoiding effort. It is the price a man pays for choosing comfort over growth. A man who understands this will never allow himself to fall into that trap. He will endure the pain of discipline today because he knows that the alternative is far worse. Most men do not think about the future until it becomes the present. They do not recognize the consequences of their choices until they are already suffering from them. They assume they will always have more time to fix their mistakes. But time is the one thing they cannot get back. A man who embraces discipline understands this better than anyone. He does not allow himself the luxury of procrastination. He does not make decisions based on comfort. He does not wait until he feels ready. He chooses action over delay, effort over avoidance, pain over regret. Most men will reach the end of their lives wishing they had done things differently. They will look back at opportunities they ignored, at potential they wasted, at time they threw away. But the few who lived with discipline will have no regrets. They will not wonder, what if? Because they will have already done the hard things, made the sacrifices, and lived the life that others were too weak to pursue. And that is the difference between a man who owns his future and a man who is forever haunted by his past. A man who understands the cost of regret never allows himself to fall into the trap of wasting time. He does what is necessary, regardless of how difficult it is, because he knows that comfort today means suffering tomorrow. But even after embracing discipline, most men still cling to one last illusion, that their worth is defined by who they are, not what they offer. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. People only care about you when you are useful. They may like you, they may admire you, they may even respect you, but only as long as you provide something valuable. The moment you lose that value, the moment you stop being an asset, the moment you can no longer serve a purpose, you become invisible. Most men go through life believing that their relationships are built on loyalty, on shared memories, on deep bonds that cannot be broken. They assume that people stick around because of who they are, not because of what they bring. But time reveals the truth. The moment a man loses his status, his power, or his ability to provide, he will watch people slowly disappear. The invitations stop. The calls fade. The attention shifts to someone else who offers more. Stoicism teaches that expecting loyalty in a world driven by self-interest is foolish. People follow strength. They attach themselves to those who provide opportunity, resources, influence, or protection. This is not cruelty. It is nature. Just as a tree is only valuable when it bears fruit, a man is only respected as long as he has something to offer. The moment his usefulness fades, so does the interest in him. Most men resist this truth. They tell themselves that their relationships are different. They believe that their friendships, their family ties, their romantic connections are stronger than circumstance. They convince themselves that the people around them will always be there, regardless of what happens. But the first sign of struggle, the first moment of failure, the first instance where they can no longer give, proves them wrong. A man who expects people to stay when he is no longer useful is living in a fantasy. He assumes that gratitude lasts forever, that past sacrifices will always be remembered, that loyalty is unconditional. But human nature does not work this way. People gravitate toward what benefits them in the present, not what was done for them in the past. A man who loses his ability to contribute learns this lesson brutally. The friends who once relied on him suddenly have no time. The woman who once adored him begins to pull away. The people who once called him important move on to someone else who offers more. Stoicism teaches that the only way to navigate this reality is to expect nothing from others. A man who understands that people are drawn to utility, not sentiment, is never caught off guard. He does not base his sense of worth on the loyalty of others. He does not become bitter when people leave. He does not waste energy resenting human nature. He accepts it. Most men spend their lives trying to secure relationships through loyalty, generosity, or sacrifice. They give everything in the hope that others will do the same for them. They assume that by being dependable, by always being there, by never saying no, they will create unbreakable bonds. But the reality is that dependency does not create loyalty. It creates expectation. The more a man gives, the more people expect from him. And the moment he stops giving, they move on to someone else who can. A man who understands this does not give blindly. He does not invest in relationships based on what he wishes were true. He invests based on what is true. He does not expect people to stay if he no longer serves a purpose. He does not build his life around being needed. He does not seek validation through being indispensable. Most men make the mistake of thinking that self-worth comes from being valuable to others. They shape their identity around how useful they are. They believe that as long as they are needed, they will never be alone. But this is a trap. A man who only has value when he is useful is a man who is always at the mercy of others. The moment they no longer need him, he has nothing left. A strong man does not build his worth on external validation. He does not attach his identity to what he provides. He cultivates value within himself that is independent of others. He does not seek to be needed. He seeks to be self-sufficient. He does not rely on others to determine his importance. He determines it for himself. Most men refuse to accept that relationships are conditional. They cling to the belief that loyalty is permanent, that appreciation is forever, that the people in their lives will always be there. But the world doesn't operate on sentiment. The moment a man becomes a burden instead of an asset, he is left behind. A man who understands this never allows himself to become disposable. He does not put himself in a position where his survival depends on the goodwill of others. He does not assume that his past efforts will secure his future importance. He stays valuable. He keeps himself useful, not for others, but for himself. Most men do not see the danger in tying their worth to external validation until it is too late. They build their entire identity around being wanted. They believe that their importance comes from what they provide. And when the world moves on, when they are no longer needed, when the people they thought were permanent disappear, they collapse. A man who is unshaken by this truth is powerful. He does not expect gratitude. He does not rely on appreciation. He does not assume that people will stay just because they once benefited from his presence. He operates with clarity, knowing that people come and go based on what they need, not based on what they once felt. Most men will learn this truth when it is too late. They will give endlessly, thinking they are securing relationships, only to be abandoned when they have nothing left to offer. But the few who understand this in time will never be caught unprepared. They will never build their sense of worth on something as fragile as human loyalty. They will remain in control, not because they expect people to stay, but because they never needed them to in the first place. A man who understands that people only care about him when he is useful will never allow himself to become dependent on the approval of others. He builds his worth from within, not from external validation. But there is one area where most men betray themselves without realizing it: their own body. Nothing reveals a man's self-respect more than the way he treats his physical form. A man who neglects his health who allows himself to become weak, slow, and undisciplined, is showing the world that he does not value himself. He is telling everyone that he does not believe he is worth the effort. And no matter how intelligent, wealthy, or successful he may be, a body that is deteriorating because of his own neglect exposes his weakness. Most men only realize too late that their physical state is not just about health. It is about self-respect. It is a mirror reflecting how much discipline they have, how much control they exercise over their own desires, and how much they value their own existence. A man who lets his body decay is a man who has given up. He has surrendered to laziness, to comfort, to the slow poison of apathy. He no longer fights for himself. And when a man no longer fights for himself, he invites the world to treat him like he is nothing. Stoicism teaches that the body follows the mind. If a man's body is weak, it is because his mind is weak. If he cannot control his physical state, it is because he has already lost control internally. He has chosen short-term pleasure over long-term strength. He has decided that indulgence is more important than discipline. He has prioritized comfort over respect. And the consequences of that choice are written on his body for everyone to see. Most men think that their physical form does not matter as long as they are successful in other areas. They believe that as long as they have intelligence, money, or status, they do not need to maintain their strength. But this is a lie. A man's body is the most visible proof of his discipline. It is the first thing people see, the first thing they judge, the first thing that communicates what kind of man he is before he ever speaks a word. A man who is physically weak will always be treated as weak, no matter what else he has achieved. A man who respects himself does not allow his body to become fragile. He does not make excuses. He does not say he is too busy, too old, too tired. He does not tell himself that discipline is unnecessary, that health does not matter, that physical strength is just for athletes. He understands that if he cannot master himself, he cannot master anything else. Most men fall into physical weakness because they have no control over their desires. They eat whatever they want, whenever they want. They avoid discomfort. They stay inside their comfort zone. They choose the path of least resistance. They become soft, not just in body, but in mind. And this weakness infects every other part of their life. Their energy fades. Their confidence disappears. Their ability to face challenges weakens. They become less than what they could be, and they know it. A man who allows his body to fall apart does not need anyone else to judge him. He is already ashamed of himself. He feels it every time he looks in the mirror. He notices it in the way others treat him. He hears it in the voice inside his head, the voice that tells him he could be more, but he is choosing to be less. And this internal war destroys him. Stoicism teaches that the body is a tool, a weapon, a man's greatest physical asset. To neglect it is a betrayal of everything he could be. A man who is strong physically is not just strong in body, he is strong in willpower. He has proven to himself that he can endure pain, that he can overcome weakness, that he can control himself in a world that constantly tempts him to fall apart. He is a master of his own nature, not a slave to his own impulses. Most men do not realize that weakness is a choice. They believe it happens slowly, naturally, as they age, as life gets busy, as priorities shift. But this is just an excuse. Weakness is not something that happens to a man. It's something a man allows to happen to himself, and if he allows it, he deserves the consequences. A man who chooses strength does not wait until his body is failing to take action. He does not wait until he is sick, exhausted, and embarrassed to start caring. He does not make excuses about genetics, about metabolism, about past injuries. He takes control now. He builds himself, not for vanity, not for admiration, but because he respects himself enough to demand strength from his own body. Most men will never understand this. They will let themselves go, slowly but surely. They will lose their energy, their vitality, their presence. They will tell themselves it does not matter, until it does. Until they wake up one day and realize that they have lost control, and they have no one to blame but themselves. A man who values his existence does not allow himself to become weak. He does not wait for motivation. He does not make excuses. He trains his body because he understands that weakness is not an option. He does not allow laziness to take root. He does not accept anything less than the best version of himself, because he knows that the moment he allows weakness, he is telling the world that he does not care about himself. Most men believe they have time. They think they can neglect themselves now and fix it later, but later never comes. Every day of neglect adds up. Every excuse becomes a habit. Every choice to stay weak makes it harder to become strong, and before they know it, it is too late. A man who respects himself does not gamble with his future. He does not assume he will always have time. He understands that every day is a test, every action is a decision, every choice is either making him stronger or making him weaker. And because of that, he chooses strength every time. Most men will die weak, not because they had to, but because they allowed it, because they let their comfort destroy them, because they convinced themselves that their body did not matter, because they failed to see that their physical strength was the foundation for everything else in their life. But the few who understand this will never fall into that trap. They will never let themselves decay. They will never allow themselves to become something they do not respect. They will build themselves, not just for survival, not just for appearance, but because they know that strength is the ultimate proof of self-respect. And a man who truly respects himself will never allow weakness to define him. A man who allows his body to fall into weakness has already surrendered a critical part of his existence. He has let comfort win, but the physical body is only one part of the war. A greater battle is being fought in the mind. Most men, without realizing it, have already lost, not to a visible enemy, but to an invisible one. Distraction. This is the silent killer of potential. It robs men of focus, clarity, and depth, all while making them believe they are still in control. The modern world does not need to chain men physically. It simply floods them with so much noise, so much stimulation, so much meaningless entertainment that they never develop the ability to think. They are always occupied but never progressing, always engaged but never growing. Their minds are filled with endless consumption, but they remain empty. Most men are completely addicted to distraction. Their hands reach for their phones before they are even awake. Their days are filled with quick dopamine hits, scrolling, clicking, consuming, jumping from one piece of content to the next. They tell themselves they are relaxing, that they are just staying informed, that these distractions do not control them. But if they were to sit in complete silence with no phone, no screen, no noise, they would feel an unbearable discomfort. The truth is simple. A man who cannot be alone with his own thoughts is a man who does not know himself. He has lost his ability to sit in stillness, to reflect, to confront his own mind without external stimulation. He cannot focus on a single task without reaching for his next source of entertainment. His mind has been hijacked, and in this state he is powerless. Stoicism teaches that a man's power comes from his ability to control his mind. If he cannot master his thoughts, he will never master his life. But distraction ensures that most men never even get close. Instead of working on themselves, they spend their time consuming shallow content. Instead of deep thinking, they fill every free moment with cheap entertainment. Instead of mental strength, they develop mental addiction. Most men believe that their distractions are harmless. They convince themselves that spending hours on their phone is normal, that watching endless videos is just how people relax, that scrolling for hours is not a real problem. But the reality is brutal. Every moment spent on distraction is a moment stolen from what they could have built. A man who is addicted to distraction never finishes anything important. He never builds, never creates, never pushes himself towards something meaningful. He starts things, but does not complete them. He makes plans, but never follows through. His attention is constantly pulled in 100 different directions, and because of that, he makes no real progress in any. Most men do not even know what deep focus feels like. They have trained their minds to jump from one thing to the next, never sitting with a single thought long enough to extract real meaning from it. They read books, but never absorb them. They watch content, but never apply it. They move through life passively consuming instead of actively creating. A man who cannot control his attention is a man who is controlled by everything around him. He is not in charge of his thoughts. His environment is. The algorithms decide what he sees. The notifications decide when he looks. The platforms decide how much time he spends. He is not free. He is a slave to whatever demands his focus first. Stoicism teaches that true clarity comes from stillness, the ability to sit in silence, to think deeply, to direct one's own mind instead of letting the world do it for you. This is the foundation of a powerful mind. But most men are terrified of stillness. They cannot bear the quiet, because in the quiet they must face their own thoughts. They must confront everything they have been avoiding. A man who cannot be alone with himself is a man who is running from himself. He distracts himself so he does not have to think about the things he has failed to do, the time he has wasted, the potential he has ignored. He drowns his mind in content so he does not have to deal with the silence that would force him to confront reality. Most men live in this state of constant mental noise. They have lost their ability to focus for long periods. They check their phones hundreds of times a day, never letting their minds settle. They jump from task to task, from app to app, from thought to thought, always looking for the next thing to keep them occupied. And in doing so, they lose themselves completely. A man who does not control his mind cannot control his future. He is easily manipulated, easily influenced, easily led by whatever grabs his attention first. He is weak, not because he lacks intelligence, but because his intelligence is constantly being diluted by distractions. Most men never experience the depth of thought required to change their own lives. They stay on the surface, living in a state of reaction instead of action. They consume content about self-improvement, but never improve. They read about success, but never take the steps to achieve it. They watch others build great things while they waste their own time on distractions. A man who understands this truth makes war against distraction. He does not let his focus be stolen. He removes the unnecessary. He creates barriers between himself and the things that weaken his mind. He does not let himself be pulled into endless scrolling, into meaningless content, into mindless consumption. He reclaims control. Most men never do this. They live and die in the same cycle of distraction, always busy but never productive, always consuming but never growing. They allow their attention to be fragmented, their potential to be wasted, their minds to be dulled. And when they reach the end of their lives, they realize they never truly lived. They were too distracted to do so. A man who frees himself from distraction is a man who reclaims his mind. He does not waste time watching others live. He is too busy living. He does not let his focus be stolen by useless things. He guards it like his greatest weapon. He builds depth where others stay shallow. He creates where others only consume. He thinks deeply where others never think at all. Most men will never do this. They will remain prisoners of distraction, wasting years on things that do not matter, until one day they look up and realize their time is gone. But those who see through the illusion will take their focus back, sharpen their minds, and build a life that is not wasted on noise, but directed by clarity, discipline, and purpose. A man who escapes the trap of distraction reclaims his mind. He removes the noise, sharpens his focus, and becomes a man of clarity and purpose. But clarity alone is not enough, because most men, even after freeing themselves from distractions, fall into another illusion. They believe that if they just fix their habits, eliminate bad influences, and discipline themselves, they will finally be happy. This is a mistake. Happiness is not something you chase. It is not a destination. It is not a reward waiting for you at the end of your struggles. It is a byproduct of strength. Men who spend their lives searching for happiness never find it. They drift from one pursuit to another, constantly thinking that the next achievement, the next relationship, the next milestone will finally bring them peace. But happiness does not come from getting what you want. It comes from becoming unshakable in the face of everything you don't want. The modern world has convinced men that their highest goal should be to feel good. They are told to pursue pleasure, to find their passion, to seek comfort. But this pursuit only makes them weaker. A man who is obsessed with feeling happy is a man who will avoid everything that challenges him, forces him to grow, or makes him uncomfortable. He will choose ease over discipline, comfort over hardship, pleasure over purpose. And in doing so, he will destroy his own potential. Happiness cannot be pursued directly. The harder a man tries to be happy, the more he will suffer. He will start to believe that any discomfort is a sign that something is wrong. He will run from hardship instead of embracing it. He will become fragile, weak, and incapable of enduring anything that does not give him immediate pleasure. This is the path to misery. Stoicism teaches that true strength comes from accepting life exactly as it is, not as you wish it to be. A man who seeks happiness directly is constantly disappointed, but a man who seeks strength, discipline, and resilience. Happiness follows him naturally, not because he is chasing it, but because he has built himself into the kind of man who is fulfilled by growth, not by pleasure. Most men live under the illusion that happiness is something they can achieve. They believe that if they just work hard enough, if they just get the right circumstances, they will finally be content. But life doesn't work that way. There is always another obstacle, another challenge, another hardship waiting. A man who depends on everything going perfectly in order to feel happy is a man who will never be happy for long. A man who chases happiness also becomes easy to manipulate. Because he wants to feel good, he will do anything that promises him joy. He will fall for shallow pleasures, toxic relationships, and false hope. He will waste time chasing things that have no real value because they make him feel good temporarily. He will constantly move from one excitement to the next, never satisfied, always searching, always needing more. The strongest men understand that happiness is a side effect of living with purpose. They do not seek joy, they seek mastery. They do not chase pleasure, they chase growth. They do not expect life to be easy. They expect themselves to be strong enough to handle whatever comes. And because of this, they become the kind of men who do not need happiness to function. They are stable, grounded, unshakable, and ironically, because they are not desperate to be happy, they often experience the deepest sense of fulfillment. Most men will never understand this. They will spend their entire lives trying to fix their emotions, trying to make themselves feel good, trying to eliminate anything that makes them uncomfortable, and they will fail. Because the moment they get what they thought would make them happy, they will immediately need something else. Their minds will always tell them that happiness is just one step away. But that step never ends. It is an endless staircase that leads nowhere. A man who seeks strength instead of happiness frees himself from this trap. He does not expect life to feel good all the time. He does not crumble when things go wrong. He does not think that struggle means failure. He understands that true happiness comes from the ability to face suffering without breaking. Most men want happiness without earning it. They want the rewards without the effort. They want peace without struggle. But peace is not something that is given. It is something that is forged. It is built through discipline, through endurance, through facing adversity and refusing to quit. A man who embraces hardship becomes immune to the misery that consumes others. A man who pursues happiness as his main goal will always be a slave to his emotions. He will wake up each day wondering, "Why don't I feel happy?" And instead of pushing forward, instead of strengthening himself, instead of doing what must be done, he will waste time trying to fix his feelings. But a man who seeks strength wakes up with a different mindset. He does not ask, "How can I be happy?" He asks, "What must I do today to become stronger?" And in that pursuit, he finds a sense of fulfillment that no pleasure can match. Most men will never break free from their emotional slavery. They will continue to believe that their happiness is somewhere in the future, that once they get the right job, the right woman, the right success, everything will fall into place. But they will always be chasing something they can never catch. Because happiness does not come from getting what you want. It comes from becoming the kind of man who does not need anything to feel whole. Stoicism teaches that the only real power a man has is over his own mind. If he controls his perception, if he controls his actions, if he controls his response to hardship, then he does not need to chase happiness. Because he will already have something far more valuable, the ability to remain unshaken no matter what happens. A weak man is always searching for happiness. He is always looking for something to make him feel better. He is always trying to escape discomfort. But a strong man does not seek escape. He embraces reality fully. And in doing so, he becomes unbreakable. Most men will never understand this. They will waste years of their lives chasing an illusion, never realizing that happiness is not something you find. It is something that follows when you stop needing it. But the few who understand this truth will never again be controlled by their emotions. They will never again feel lost. They will never again wonder what they need to do to be happy, because they will already have everything they need, not from the world, not from success, not from other people, but from within themselves. A man who stops chasing happiness and instead builds himself into something unshakable will never again be at the mercy of fleeting emotions. He will no longer be tossed around by every setback, nor will he crumble when life does not go his way. But there is one final trap that most men never escape: the false belief that the world owes them something. This is one of the hardest lessons to learn. Most men secretly believe that if they struggle, if they suffer, if they endure hardship, the world should recognize it. They assume that their pain should mean something to others, that if they're good people, if they do the right thing, if they work hard, life will eventually reward them. But the truth is brutal. No one cares. Most men live with the false expectation that others will understand them. They think that their struggles, their emotions, their difficulties should be acknowledged and validated. They expect the world to stop and appreciate how hard they've tried. But the world does not stop for anyone. No one is coming to rescue them. No one will hand them the life they want. If they are weak, they will be left behind. If they complain, they will be ignored. If they wait for fairness, they will wait forever. Stoicism teaches that a man who expects the world to be kind is destined to be disappointed. The world is not cruel, but it is indifferent. It does not care about feelings. It does not recognize effort. It does not operate on fairness. It only rewards those who take what they want through strength, discipline, and resilience. A man who understands this stops waiting for understanding. He builds himself into a man who does not need it. Most men spend their lives begging for validation. They want to be seen. They want people to acknowledge their struggles. They want sympathy, kindness, and support. But they do not realize that by seeking these things, they are making themselves weak. A man who constantly explains himself, who expects others to care about his difficulties, is a man who will always be at the mercy of others. No one respects a man who asks for permission to be strong. No one admires a man who waits to be understood before he takes action. No one follows a man who needs approval before he does what must be done. Powerful men do not need to be understood. They only need to act. Most men do not want to accept this truth. They cling to the hope that if they struggle long enough, if they suffer openly, if they express their difficulties, someone will come along and make things right. But no one is coming. No one is obligated to help. No one owes them anything. The sooner a man realizes this, the sooner he can become free. A weak man complains about how unfair life is. He tells himself that people do not appreciate him, that the world is harsh, that others should treat him better. But a strong man does not waste time wishing things were different. He makes himself stronger so that nothing can break him. Most men who expect understanding will never achieve anything great. They will waste years feeling sorry for themselves, waiting for someone to recognize their pain, hoping that if they explain their struggles enough, someone will fix them. But the men who shape history, the men who rise above everyone else, are the ones who do not wait for the world to understand them. They act. Stoicism teaches that the only thing a man can control is himself. If he expects the world to be kind, if he believes that others will adjust to accommodate his emotions, he is setting himself up for a lifetime of disappointment. But if he expects nothing, if he relies only on himself, if he understands that life will always be difficult, he becomes invincible. Most men are weak because they have been taught to expect fairness. They believe that if they struggle, if they suffer, they are entitled to recognition. But the reality is simple. Life does not reward suffering. It rewards strength. It does not give trophies for pain. It does not give recognition for endurance. It only rewards those who keep moving forward, no matter what. A man who truly understands this stops asking for understanding. He stops explaining himself. He stops expecting sympathy. He stops waiting for fairness. Instead, he builds himself into a man who does not need any of it. He does not expect the world to change for him. He changes himself to dominate the world. Most men will never understand this. They will keep explaining their struggles, hoping that someone will care, hoping that someone will recognize their difficulties. But the few who grasp this truth early will never again waste time waiting for permission to be strong. They will rise above the weak, not because they were given an advantage, but because they stopped expecting the world to be different and instead became different themselves. A man who expects the world to understand him has already surrendered his power. He waits for sympathy instead of creating strength. He wastes years looking for validation instead of forging himself into something unstoppable. But there's a deeper reason why men fall into this weakness. They have no purpose. Without a purpose, a man is already dead. He may walk, talk, and function, but inside, he is nothing. His days blend together, his actions feel meaningless, and his existence becomes a slow decay. A man without purpose is easily distracted, easily manipulated, and easily broken. He has no fire inside him, no reason to fight, no foundation to stand on. He becomes another nameless figure, drifting through life, waiting for something to give him meaning. But nothing ever will. Purpose is not given. It is not something a man stumbles upon by luck. It does not fall into his hands. It is built. It is forged. It is fought for. A man who waits for purpose will never find it. A man who expects passion to strike him like lightning will wait forever. The only way to find purpose is to create it, to take action, to push forward, to carve meaning out of the struggle of existence. Most men do not want to accept this. They tell themselves that one day they will figure it out. They wait for clarity, for motivation, for inspiration. But waiting is another word for wasting time. There is no perfect moment. There is no sudden realization that will set everything right. A man must move forward before he feels ready. He must act before he has the answers. He must build before he knows what he is building. Stoicism teaches that purpose is not about finding something external to chase. It is about choosing to face life with discipline, strength, and determination. It is about turning struggle into meaning, hardship into growth, and suffering into wisdom. A man who seeks comfort will never find purpose. A man who avoids pain will never build anything of value. Purpose is found in resistance. It is found in the battle against weakness. It is found in the willingness to endure and push forward, no matter what. Most men are lost because they live without a reason to fight. They distract themselves with entertainment, with comfort, with meaningless pleasures. They fill the emptiness with noise, hoping that if they stay busy enough they won't have to face the truth. They are wasting their lives. A man without purpose is a man who dies every day. He wakes up with no fire in his soul. He moves through life like a ghost, present but not truly alive. He has no direction, no guiding principle, no reason to push forward when things get hard. And when life tests him, when adversity strikes, when challenges arise, he crumbles because he has nothing to hold on to. Most men confuse purpose with pleasure. They think that if they are enjoying themselves, they must be on the right path. But pleasure is not purpose. Pleasure fades. It is temporary, fleeting, and ultimately empty. Purpose, on the other hand, is something that burns inside a man. It does not come and go based on feelings. It does not vanish when things get difficult. It remains, even in suffering, especially in suffering. A weak man avoids discomfort. A strong man embraces it. He understands that struggle is not the enemy. It is the source of meaning. Every challenge he overcomes, every hardship he endures, every moment of suffering he withstands, these things build him into something greater. A man with purpose does not avoid pain. He walks into it willingly, knowing that on the other side he will be stronger than before. Most men never develop purpose because they are afraid of commitment. They want to keep their options open, to stay flexible, to avoid locking themselves into anything difficult. But this is why they fail. A man without commitment is a man without direction. Purpose requires dedication, the willingness to choose a path and walk it relentlessly, even when it is hard, even when there are temptations to quit, even when doubt whispers that he should turn back. A man who refuses to commit to something greater than himself will always feel lost. He will chase distractions. He will seek comfort. He will wander through life aimlessly, always moving, but never arriving anywhere. He will feel empty, restless, unsatisfied, and worst of all, he will not know why. Stoicism teaches that a man's purpose is not something external. It is the way he chooses to live every moment of his life. Purpose is not about a specific career, a certain goal, or an external achievement. It's about how a man approaches existence itself. Does he live with discipline, with integrity, with courage? Or does he drift, waiting for someone to give him direction? Most men die without ever truly living, not because they lacked opportunity, not because the world was unfair to them, but because they never committed themselves to anything that mattered. They spent their days chasing distractions, avoiding pain, and waiting for happiness to arrive. But life does not work that way. A man who waits will wait until the grave. A man who acts, he will carve his own destiny. A weak man makes excuses. He tells himself that he will find his purpose someday. He convinces himself that he has time, that he does not need to rush, that one day everything will fall into place. But the truth is brutal. There is no someday. There is only now. A man who does not take action today will never take action at all. A man who builds purpose understands that his time is limited. He knows that every wasted day is a day he will never get back. He does not wait for the perfect moment. He starts now, with whatever he has, wherever he is, and he never stops moving forward. He does not need inspiration. He does not need motivation. He only needs the will to act. Most men will never escape the prison of aimlessness. They will continue drifting, distracting themselves, convincing themselves that they have time. They will live, but they will not be alive. They will exist, but they will never matter. They will fill their days with entertainment, with comfort, with empty pleasures. But when the distractions fade, when the entertainment ends, when they are left alone with their thoughts, they will feel the weight of their wasted existence. A man with purpose does not have this problem. He wakes up with fire in his soul. He moves through life with intention. He does not waste time because he understands that his time is the most valuable thing he has. He does not need external validation. He does not need constant pleasure. He only needs to know that he is pushing forward, becoming better, leaving behind something greater than himself. Most men will never understand this. They will live and die without ever feeling the intensity of true purpose. But the few who do, the few who take control of their lives, who commit themselves fully, who embrace struggle and hardship as the price of meaning, these men will never feel lost again. They will never wonder if their life has value. They will never question whether they are on the right path, because they will know, not because someone told them, not because the world gave them permission, but because they built it themselves. A man without purpose is already dead inside, but there is something even worse, believing he has time. This is the greatest illusion of all. Most men walk through life as if they are immune to death, as if the future is promised. as if they can afford to waste days, months, years, waiting, delaying, making excuses. They assume they will get another chance. They believe they will have time later. But time is not something a man owns. Time is something that is slipping away every second, whether he is ready or not. There is no greater lie than, "I'll do it later." Later is not guaranteed. Later is not real. The moment a man postpones something important, he is gambling with his own life. He assumes that there will be another opportunity, another chance, another day to take action. But the graveyards are filled with men who thought they had more time. They had plans. They had goals. They told themselves they would get to it eventually. And then they were gone. Most men waste their lives because they believe death is far away. They think they can afford to relax, to indulge, to procrastinate. They do not realize that every breath brings them closer to their last. Every wasted day is one less day they will ever have. Every moment spent on meaningless distractions is a moment they can never get back. Stoicism teaches memento mori, the practice of remembering death, not as a morbid thought, not as something to fear, but as the ultimate source of clarity. A man who understands that death is close stops wasting time. He does not postpone the things that matter. He does not wait for the perfect moment. He acts, he moves, he lives. Most men will never wake up to this reality. They will continue to drift, assuming they will get serious one day. But when does that day come? When they are too old to do anything about it, when their bodies have weakened, when regret has already set in. The time to act is not tomorrow. It is not someday. It is now. A man who understands the closeness of death lives with urgency. He does not waste time on people who drain his energy. He does not tolerate relationships that do not serve him. He does not waste his strength trying to please those who do not matter. He moves with purpose because he knows he is running out of time. Most men believe they have enough time to enjoy life later. They put off their dreams. They put off their ambitions. They put off becoming the man they were meant to be. But later never comes. The only thing that arrives is regret. The realization that they have wasted their one opportunity. That the life they wanted was always within reach, but they were too distracted, too hesitant, too afraid to grab it. A man who accepts his mortality stops playing small. He does not live cautiously, avoiding risks, trying to preserve a future that may never come. He does not let fear stop him from taking action. He understands that safety is an illusion, that comfort is a trap, that the only thing worse than dying young is living a life that was never truly lived. Most men spend their lives avoiding thoughts of death. They do not want to face it. They do not want to acknowledge that their time is limited. But a man who ignores death also ignores life. He lives passively, waiting, assuming that he can afford to waste time. But the truth is simple. He cannot afford it. No one can. A man who embraces his mortality does not hesitate. He does not wait for permission. He does not wonder what others will think. He moves. He builds. He takes action, not because he has all the answers, but because he knows he does not have forever. Most men live like they have a second chance waiting for them. They do not. When the final moment comes, they do not get to ask for more time. They do not get to go back and change their decisions. They do not get to undo the years they wasted. They only get one opportunity, and once it is gone forever. A weak man runs from this truth. A strong man uses it. He lets the reality of death push him to do the things most men avoid. He speaks his mind while he still has a voice. He builds his legacy while he still has the strength. He chooses courage over hesitation because he knows that one day he will no longer have the option. Most men will spend their final moments wishing they had lived differently, wishing they had taken more chances, wishing they had not played it safe. But by then, it will be too late. The strongest men understand this long before the end arrives. They do not wait to live. They live now. A man who does not take death seriously does not take life seriously. He exists, but he does not live. He fills his time with distractions, numbing himself to the fact that every wasted second is a second he will never get back. But a man who keeps death in mind is never caught off guard. He is never surprised by time running out, because he knew it was coming and he lived accordingly. Most men will never do this. They will continue wasting time, living in denial, telling themselves that they have years ahead of them. But the few who understand the truth, the few who live with the awareness of death, will live a life free from regret. Because when the final moment comes, they will not beg for more time. They will not wish they had done things differently. They will simply close their eyes, knowing that they truly lived. Most men live as if they have forever. They tolerate disrespect, chase illusions, waste their strength, and wait for the right time that never comes. They seek comfort over growth, validation over self-respect, and distractions over purpose. And by the time they wake up, it's too late. The truth is brutal. Life does not wait for you to figure it out. Time is slipping through your hands, whether you take action or not. The world does not care about your struggles. People only respect strength. And the cost of wasting your years will always be heavier than the discomfort of discipline. Stoicism does not promise happiness, it promises clarity. It teaches that the man who controls himself controls his destiny, that nothing is guaranteed, that suffering is inevitable, and that your only true power lies in how you respond to life. You've now been handed the lessons most men never learn until it's too late. But the question is, what will you do with them? You can keep waiting, pretending you have time, hoping things will fall into place, ignoring the reality that every wasted moment is a moment stolen from your future. Or you can wake up now, set boundaries, take action, embrace hardship, let go of weakness, and build yourself into a man that does not need another warning to start living. The choice is yours, but understand this: no one is coming to save you. No one will hand you discipline, respect, or strength. You either claim it for yourself, or you will die full of regret. Which lesson hit you the hardest? Drop a comment below and let me know. And if you're serious about transforming your mindset, subscribe now, because the next lesson might be the one that finally changes everything.